Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Three in the Keystone, episode 39. It's the Brett Myers episode. I got Al Ryan. I got Chris Guest. We are recording on a Monday. A little change in the schedule with some big Sixers game tomorrow for Chris and some traveling for myself. And we're keeping Al away from the UConn National Championship where he's got some big money on the line tonight. What's the total pot if they hit? What do you hit for?
16. It's a little over 1,600.
Ooh, that's a nice come up.
Yeah, so I'm locked into second place. I can't do any worse than second. I think second is like 580 or something like that. So it's a pretty substantial jump.
That is a big pot. So if you're listening, we're still going to be releasing this on Wednesday. So it's basically going to be like Tuesday never happened. Essentially, the way we're going to go about doing this thing. But we were talking about recording tomorrow afternoon, or maybe it was today earlier. Al, I got to know, what is spring break in the Ryan household like without the wife?
It's just a whole lot of just keeping the kids busy. It's not really, spring break isn't the right word. It's not a break.
Right.
I mean, this is just life. Life just continues.
It's a break for the kids.
Yeah, but I mean, the kids are home. They don't have school. So now it's just more on us. Like it's like we were saying, so when we did the days draft and you said the last day of the school year, and I said, well, it depends. If you're a parent, you have little kids, that's not a great day.
Maybe the first day of the school year might be the best day.
Yeah, so now they're just home all the time. I know a couple that when the first day of the school year, they both take off from work and they just have a party that day.
That's a smart move.
Remember that commercial from Staples back in the day when they had it's the most wonderful time, and it was for the first day of school, and the parents were like, "Let's go,
get
off the bus."
But
wait, Seltzer, I'm going actually tomorrow. Well, when the pod comes out, this will have been yesterday. I'm going Tuesday for a little driver tune-up lesson over at T's.
Oh,
I'm finally with the man, with Brian Quinn.
Is he the owner of 1912?
I don't know, but he's the owner of the academy. It's named after him. The place is named after him.
You got to let me know how it goes.
I will.
In Conchi?
Yeah.
I gotta, now that I'm gonna have some time, at least for the first and third month of summer, I gotta get out there and get some chops going.
Yeah, let me know. Get a little chop.
Yeah.
Let me know we want to get out there.
Yeah, no grass, no field safe.
But you mentioned, Chris, the most wonderful time of the year in the Staples commercial. It was not a wonderful weekend if you were a Philadelphia sports fan. And we're going to start in segment one by talking about the Philadelphia Phillies, who had a rough start to the season. They get swept by the Texas Rangers. Gave up, 27 runs in the first two games?
Yeah.
Somewhere along those lines. Believe it or not, the Phillies are now 0-12 in their last 12 games against the Texas Rangers.
That's so weird because they're not even a good team in the last few years. Like, I don't know why that's a thing, but.
Do you know who the starting pitcher was the last time the Phillies beat the Texas Rangers? Notable name. It's not a crazy name.
Can you tell me what year it was?
It had to be 5 years ago, right?
I think it was 13 or 14.
Oh, Chan-Ho Park.
I'm gonna guess. So 13 or 14 years ago puts us at what, 2009 or
No, that was the year 2013.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. No, I don't know.
It was actually that Cliff Lee.
All right.
Yeah, they actually gave up like 8 runs in 5 innings, but they won like 14-10. Utley, Rollins, Howard were all in the lineup. It's been that long since they beat Texas.
That's a fun little quick question.
Chan-Ho Park was a Ranger though at one point, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a Philly too, but he was a reliever. Oh, I think he actually started a couple games for the Phillies, but he was good at the bullpen for us.
Also, the 27, I don't know if you were about to say it or not, Seltzer, but the 27 runs allowed in those first 2 games were the most since 1895.
For the Phillies or for anybody?
It's for the Phillies. But it was the most, I think, ever since 1923.
So the Phillies are now one of 3 teams in Major League Baseball that do not have a win. They currently trail the Yankees 3-1 to 5th, along with the Detroit Tigers and the Kansas City Royals. So not elite company. I guess we'll throw the question out there. How concerned are you with the start?
I'm zero concerned. I mean, it felt like an extension of spring training. I there's 159 games left. So if you're going to tell me that these 3 games are like a death sentence to this team, then I mean, then I guess I don't have any baseball to watch for the next 4 months.
That's such a stereotypical negative Philadelphia mindset to be like, oh, we're screwed all in 3 games.
Right. I mean, look, some of these guys barely pitched any innings in the spring. I mean, who was it that Soto didn't really look good in that first game, obviously. So Greg Soto and Sir Anthony Dominguez looking like crap. Yeah. But they both had the illustrious infinite ERA after their games.
So I have a note in the series altogether. Dominguez, Soto, and Kimbrel allowed 10 runs in 1 1/3.
Awesome,
good. I'll tell you who needs to be worried is that pitching coach, because if they don't get it together, he got to be the first one to go. Like the whole staff, and we got names on this staff, and all of a sudden they all forgot to pitch. Like,
what about your $400 million man?
Everybody's
blew another 5-0 lead.
Well, listen, first of all, he don't have that money yet, so you can't call him that. But yeah, he wasn't good.
He does that way too much.
Listen, I again, like Al said, I'm not concerned. The only thing that you could hang your hat on if you are concerned is that those 2 specifically didn't have good spring trainings either, and it's carried in.
Right.
But I mean, like you said, Al, it's what, April 3rd. If we was June 3rd, that's different. And if it was the NFL, if it was the Eagles starting off like this, where they were losing like 31-10, 3 games in a row, then it's through the roof concern. But baseball, I mean, we wake up, sun rises, and there's a baseball game on that night. So they got plenty of time.
So you guys seem on the same page. I'll add that I'm slightly concerned. I'm not going to say it's nothing. I'm not going to also say the house is on fire. Chris, you mentioned it. Not great springs from Wheeler specifically. Didn't look good in his first start. He's already been notably complaining about the pitch clock. I don't know how that's necessarily going to affect him. You also heard, I don't know if you guys saw Bryce Harper's interview last night. And that's a guy who, to me, when I hear Bryce Harper complaining about the pitch clock and saying something like, we just need to get the game back to where it was or something along those lines, that's a guy who hasn't even had an at-bat with the pitch clock. So to me, that's a lot of people bitching in the clubhouse about it, and he's trying to vocalize their complaints about it. So to me, that's the bigger concern is how is the staff handling it? Are they mentally having issues with it and it's affecting their work? You also heard, I don't know if you heard JT Realmuto after the first game talking about it, where he was, you should remember the 9-run inning, obviously, when they had the 5-0 lead. And JT basically said, I've never seen the momentum go to that point where we just couldn't stop it because we had to keep throwing pitches. And the momentum was, we couldn't stop anything like that. I think this pitch clock is in this team's head. And it could be a problem moving forward if they don't adjust.
Well, guess what? They better adjust, because that's the nature of the beast now, and it's no excuse because every other baseball club has the same pitch clock and they have to do the same adjustments. Look, we've mentioned this before. This is something, you getting arrested or what's going on in the back?
Yeah, I know the blue and the red is throwing me off
too. Is there
too.
A cop there?
Wow.
Whatever you're watching on TV, it's flashing on your face. It's just blue and red lights over and over and over again.
I think there's a cop on your other side of this.
I got it. Turned it off. The lighting in his room is horrible.
No, I was going to say, like, those are. It's already just organic excuses that I feel like they're making, because, like I said, every other team has to deal with this. This is the new baseball, and guess what? I love it. I think it's great. It's speeding up the game. If anything, maybe it's making it more exciting because it's allowing to have more runs in the games. But to sit here, I mean, like, you're basically saying, in my opinion, if you're a guy like Wheeler or another pitcher that's complaining about this, is like, you need 2 minutes in between pitches to be successful in this game. Right. And if that's the case, then I think that's strange and a little bit of a concern if I was that specific individual, because this is what we're going to have going forward.
Right. And Chris, those first 2 games, 18 runs combined, 19 runs combined, and just about 3 hours each game. That's the average from last season. You know how long those games would have taken last season, an 18-run game?
Yeah.
Forget it. We would have been watching that game for 4.5 hours.
Yeah.
And so I mentioned last week that I thought I was out on the pitch clock. I actually, having watched it, I enjoy it. And I have some stats for you guys just through the first 3 games. Average time of game dropped from 3 hours and 9 minutes down to 2 hours and 38 minutes.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Almost a half an hour.
Beautiful.
Batting average is up 15 points. On base percentage is up 15 points. Slugging is up about the same by 18. Stolen bases through the first 4 games of last year, 29 stolen bases. This year, 70.
Yeah.
I saw the Orioles stole 10 bags already, but they're still only 1-2. So I guess the theory of running more wins, more games hasn't really panned out for them yet. But
Well, they should be 2-1. Did you see when the guy?
I know
dropped the
yeah.
ball? That was terrible.
Also, Marte just gave up a 2-run home run, so it's 5-1 now. But these guys can't. The pitchers just are just like off the hinges. I don't know what's going. Like they just can't pitch all of a sudden. These guys.
You think maybe some of them just didn't get enough work in the spring with the pitch clock, or even in the off season with the pitch clock?
Something.
But like, what's the excuse for that? Why are they not? I don't
Right.
know.
Well, no, there is no excuse for that. You're right. There is none.
And that's what I mean. I don't know if it's the pitching coach's fault or if Thompson's fault. I don't know what's going on, but like
These guys
this
are
team is on
professional.
a historical pace right now. Obviously it's only 4 games in, but like this is bad. They're getting rocked.
Is it the fact that they were overworked last year and you're seeing the effects?
No, because I don't know about that. Because some of these guys weren't on that team. Kimbrel, this Marte dude, like they just can't pitch.
Yeah, but the guys
Taiwan Walker, he wasn't on that team.
Yeah,
I think they underestimated the change too. Like I just think they came into the spring, ho-hum, another spring, didn't really take the pitch clock seriously. They're still not taking it seriously. They're just complaining about it. And now it's time to play the real game, and they're under the pressure of that. What is it? 15 seconds?
15 seconds with nobody on base.
Dude, that's fast.
And it's like 20, what is it, 20 seconds or 30 for someone on base?
20, I think, right?
Yeah, 20 with somebody on base.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's that or what, but they got to get it together.
And I know Wheeler, how many times did Wheeler he called for it once? I remember I saw once. Did he get called for any more than that one time when it was the 0-2 count?
I don't know for sure.
I mean, it never really came into play. Like it didn't matter, but
no. Yeah, no, I think there's only been an average of about 1 violation per game across the Major League Baseball. So it hasn't been too bad. I also think, I mean, listen, I talked last week, they're too left-handed heavy. They faced a lefty last night, and that lineup they put out there just wasn't that good. When you have Christian Pache and Josh Harrison, and I like Sosa, but there's too many lefties in that lineup right now.
Well, Harrison apparently has a mysterious ankle injury that popped up. He said he doesn't know how he got it. So I don't know what that's about, but he was supposed to start tonight and it was late scratch because of that.
Yeah, I saw Stott ended up starting. Yeah. So
Sosa does have the RBI though tonight so far.
I don't mind Sosa. I think Sosa's a good player, but you can't have like 3 or 4 light hitting guys in your lineup, especially when, again, some of the other guys, like you're counting on Bohm and Castellanos, who are, I think they're nice hitters, but they're not stars by any means. And Schwarber seems to be off to one of his cold streaks to start. And we know, I mean, we talk about Hoskins being streaky. Schwarber's in that same boat.
Well, everybody wants to still keep batting him 1 or 2 in this order, and I've been saying that he should be a 4 or 5.
Yeah, Schwarber looks lost. He's swinging at some pitches that are nowhere near the zone.
Yeah, he should not be the top of an order. I don't care what anybody says, what any numbers say, what any VORP stats say, VORP and MLB equivalent. I'm sick of it. He should not be at the top of an order.
But Chris, Nicky bats so far not too bad of a start to the year. He's got some hits.
He does have a strikeout tonight.
He's got 3 doubles.
He does. Bohm raking.
Bohm's raking. And listen, we can't go this long without praising Trey Turner for being everything as advertised and more. He is like deceptively, effortlessly fast. He's hitting ground balls up the middle and is at second base.
Yeah, he's so smooth.
Yeah, he makes the game look easy, man. He's going to be a lot of fun to watch this season.
All right, so you guys said you weren't concerned, but seem to have voiced a lot of concerns. If you had to rate it from 1 to 10, where's your concern level on this team?
I'm not concerned, though. This is just reflections on the series. I mean, I don't know what else I could say about an 0-3 start to the season and a sweep to start the season, but I'm not concerned long term. So no, I'm a 1 concern. There's no concern whatsoever for me.
Yeah, I would say around the same for me too. I just think that it's wild that in these first 4 games they just can't pitch. I mean, it's kind of embarrassing. But I'm sure they'll get it together anytime now, I would imagine. So like I'm not concerned long term, but for the moment, it's rough. It's hard to watch.
And it looks like Bohm will be playing some first base this season.
All right. He did start there last night. Was he starting there tonight as well? I think he did. I think Hall was DHing.
No, Hall's starting.
Hall, who's DHing? Oh, Bohm's DHing. Got it.
Yeah.
With Sosa at first. My concern level is a 4. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, if you can't get guys out, there's something that's up. And I don't know. Again, I don't know if it is the pitch clock we're kind of assuming on that measure, or if it's the fact that they're burned out. Wheeler has logged a ton of innings over the past few years, as has Nola. And at some point that catches up with you. I hope that's not the case. It's just an April swoon, and there's plenty of time to obviously dig themselves out. But
this Marte guy's getting rocked. I don't even know who this guy is.
I think they picked him up from the Giants. But he's a back end of the bullpen guy. Like they're not counting on him up for anything other than mop up duty.
Yeah, he's getting rocked. Right now.
Maybe you need to bring back Kyle Gibson.
He brought Kyle Kendrick at this point. I don't care. Somebody.
And then we got Stram starts tomorrow, so that'll be 0-5.
Well, they'll know about it when they come back to Philly if they're pitching like this. The fan base at that stadium, they'll let them know.
Maybe we just need to face some National League teams.
Yeah, I mean, we knew the Rangers for whatever reason have our number. It's strange, but
I'll tell you what. I don't think that Rangers team is that bad. I think they're going to be in the playoff mix this year.
I don't think so. Yeah, I think the same thing. It's only you can't say like, oh, we got swept by the Rangers. They stink. Like who stinks? It's the beginning of the year.
No, yeah, I agree with that. But I want to see them play some other teams first, though, because for whatever reason they feel good about playing us all the time. I want to see how they play against other teams before I definitively say that. But they have some names.
And Bochy always wins, dude. That guy's a winner. He's a really, really good manager.
How old is he?
He's old, dude.
Yeah, he's got to be old as hell. Because he won in San Francisco, and when the hell was that?
San Francisco? How about when he was with San Diego?
Yeah, he was their manager in the World Series in '98, I believe.
He's old, man.
I'm Googling Bruce Bochy.
Well, Dusty Baker's probably up there too, though.
Yeah, but yeah. I didn't even know Bruce Bochy was still involved in baseball.
He just got hired. He's actually, believe it or not, he's only 67.
He just came back.
Yeah, this is his first year coaching Texas. Yeah, he started managing the Padres in 1995.
Okay.
But the one thing I will say that with Rob Thompson, the way he manages, do you have any concern long-term? Seltzer, it seems like you're the one out of the three of us that has a little bit of concerns. Is any of your concern built on the fact that he's kind of like a nonchalant manager, and the longer this goes, if he continues that they're not going to have any motivational factor to improve?
I've made it very clear in last year's podcast I was not a topper guy. I didn't like a lot of the way he managed the game, and I would have liked them. Although he kind of tied their hands by getting to the World Series, I wanted them to perform a full managerial search before they went on that run because I wasn't thrilled with the way he managed the game. However, I'm not going to blame him for the start of the season. I think that's more on the pitching. But yeah, he adds a little bit to my concerns. He's obviously doesn't have all the experience that another manager would. He's only experienced, the hot run, essentially. He's never been through the doldrums and the struggles outside of maybe a 2-week window in September when they really struggled. So yeah, he is another reason why I have some concern. But again, he's not to blame per se for what's going on early in the season. He's not his job to get batters out. That's on the pitchers, and no manager can do that. It's his job to press the right buttons in certain situations, and he hasn't had the opportunity to do that, but I don't have full faith in him either.
I've said it before, baseball managers do the least. At the end of the day, the players have to perform. This is a one-on-one sport. You get up, you pitch to a batter, and somebody wins that matchup. And you just do that over and over again until you get 27 outs. So, I mean, I get that he has to make certain decisions, but it's not his fault they started 0-3. I mean, you can't put that on him.
No, but what I would say though is that could be to blame for him is if they are complaining about this pitch clock situation, these pitchers, and it's going rampant through that locker room, and he's still just letting it happen, and they're just getting rocked every night. I think at some point you got to nip it in the bud as a manager and say, guys, it's like this is what baseball is right now. We either adjust or we get our ass kicked. And which one do you want to do? Because right now, this is getting, it's 8-1. This is getting out of hand. This is now 3 out of 4 games where we're getting our doors blown off, and the one game where we pitched, we couldn't hit.
Look, at the end of the day, like I said earlier, when Bryce Harper, who has not even had an at-bat with the pitch clock, is bitching about the pitch clock, you know that's
It's in there.
Locker room's talking about.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
To our defense, though, we were a foot away from potentially winning Sunday's game with the catch that kid Garcia made at the track on the shore.
Woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Yeah, but I'm just saying. I mean, it's like Chris is right. The first 2 games and this game, I mean, the pitching is taking a beating, but that game, it's not like we got blown away that game too.
Yeah, but you're again. I hear you, but this is gonna be 3 out of 4 games where they've gotten the doors knocked off, and they've given up double. Eventually, I imagine they'll give up double-digit runs tonight. So 3 out of 4 games where they've given up 10+ runs.
I agree. I just don't know what Thompson can do. What's Thompson? These are grown ass men.
This is no one Thompson yet. I just don't know if he's the guy to steer the ship. We're gonna find out.
Yeah.
But let's switch gears, and we're not going to have really a lot better tone to deal with. Our Sixers are approaching the end of the season. They've now lost 4 out of 6, including last night's 117-104 loss to the Milwaukee Bucks. Seem to be locked into a first-round matchup with the Brooklyn Nets, which we'll talk about more in depth next week when we do our NBA playoff preview. We have 4 games left in the regular season. Boston tomorrow, Miami on Thursday, Hawks on the road on Friday, and then at Brooklyn on Sunday at the end of the season. Before we talk about how we're going to handle that, I just wanted to say this. To me, the last 2 weeks of the NBA season is like week 17 in the NFL. It's really, really difficult to watch. These guys just seem to be going through the motions. Everybody stay healthy. I don't take a lot into the wins and losses at this time of year. I think it's more about, we've talked about all year, staying healthy. And you can just see it in these guys' body language and how hard they're playing, that this is just like, let's get to the finish line.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know how much of this is – but what the worry is I don't know how much of this is potentially injury or fatigue or they're hurting, and how much of it is just boredom and lackadaisical play. With the Sixers, you don't know.
Right.
If I'm a Boston fan or a Milwaukee fan, I'm still feeling confident, but I'm a Sixer fan.
I mean, you could say that after last night, but the night before, Milwaukee got beat by 40 by Boston.
That's true, but again, I'm saying they've been there, done that. They've turned it on in the postseason. We haven't.
Right.
So that's why I'm worried.
So my question is, we have 4 games left in the season. You're essentially locked into the 3 spot. You have Joel's MVP that's lingering. You've got 2 teams on the schedule that realistically could be playoff opponents at some point in time. How are you handling these last 4 games, and what is your priority going in? Chris, I'll throw it to you.
Well, I'm playing normal. So they still have, I think, a half game until they can officially clinch that 3rd spot. If I'm correct with my
I think they need 1 win.
So you still play your regular situation with your rotation and your starters, I think, until you get that point. The way I am, if I was the leader or the coach of the team, I'm playing my normal guys with the exception of the Brooklyn game on Easter Sunday, because of that being a potential matchup. I'm not showing anything to them. I know that they're in our division, even though divisions don't mean squat in the NBA anymore, but they see us 4 times a year at least. So it means, to that extent, it means something that they've seen us a good amount. But that late or that imminent of a series coming up, I wouldn't show them anything in that close time frame. So I wouldn't play Embiid or Harden or probably even Maxey even in that game. But the others, and you might be able to persuade me on sitting out Embiid at least in Atlanta.
Well, that is a back-to-back.
Right. So having him not get on the plane, Harden too with the Achilles. I might be able to be persuaded on that. But if they do that, they got to win at least one of these Celtics or Heat games, in my opinion. And if that's how it plays out, and the 3 is locked up, then I'm comfortable with sitting them out away from the flight and not showing Brooklyn anything on the last game of the year.
Well, my question is for me, I have mixed emotions about tomorrow, because we'll talk more about Brooklyn next week, but I don't think Brooklyn's going to be an issue in the playoffs. And then you're lining yourself up to face Boston. So to me, playing the guys tomorrow against Boston, you either show them something that they can adjust to. Granted, these teams know each other really well at this point in time. Or B, if you go all out and you lose again, at least if you lose not showing them nothing, you could have that in your back pocket. You go 0-4.
0-4 is not a good look regardless. They gotta get some sort of positive vibe against Boston but before the playoffs start. That to me, that you gotta play everybody, and you're at home, you gotta play everybody and play hard that game, because that's a statement. Like, you get through your guys, we'll get through our guys first round, we'll see you in a couple weeks and we'll see what happens. And so I don't want to play. To me, that's a soft mentality to say, well, we'll take the L again and we'll just hope that it'll be different when we see you in a few weeks. To me, like, I think you need to have a little bit of positivity or something to work off of, build off of, if you're the Sixers. You've already lost 3 times to them.
Yeah, you're probably right. I think I would have a little differing opinion if we had won last night and we had a little momentum, but you're probably right. It's more important to go in there and try and get a win against those guys on your home floor. And if you can't beat them on your home floor, you're not going to beat them 4 out of 7 anyway.
You saw Tobias's quotes?
I did not. What did he say?
The other day, basically saying, I'm paraphrasing, but basically saying that there's been times where you may even see it as a fan on the TV or at the game where it looks like we've, I don't want to say given up, but lost a little bit of hope in games. Bro, that's not a good quote. And that's a huge issue in terms of damning your coach too. That should not be something that comes out of your mouth in April.
Well,
at all.
It's a reflection on the coach, but it's also a reflection. We've talked about this. It's a reflection on the leadership of the basketball team, and that's Joel and James.
Well, and I mean, that's not. I mean, Tobias is a leader on that team too.
You're right. You're right. Tobias's role has shrunk so much that I don't know how much of a voice matters as much as Joel's and James. And look, I mean, we've said it a million times. What happens to this team in the playoffs is really all that matters. And it's a huge playoff for Joel and James. It's just realistically the way it is. Those guys have to show up.
Yeah.
And James, I don't know, did you watch the game last night? Like, again, I think they're going through the motions, but he's got to cut out the sloppy turnovers. There was like 2 possessions in a row last night. One where Holiday just takes the ball from him, and the other one, he tries to throw this lazy behind the back pass, and Holiday just takes that as well. That stuff can't happen in the playoffs. And like, I don't know if he has that dial up in him.
Well, here's the official quote. He said, we got to figure it out. 4 games left. I think the biggest thing is that in the midst of all that stuff, we still got to be mentally strong to win a game, or at least to present ourselves that we feel like we can win a game. If you just looked at us out there, I'm not watching the game on TV, but I can guarantee you saw a team that looked a little defeated out there from time to time in the game. That can't be us in the playoffs when the playoffs get ready to start.
Is he specifically talking about last night's game?
It was after the Milwaukee game, yeah. But still, that's a really damning quote for an organization that's looking to contend for a title in a little over a week. To start a run a little over a week to make a playoff run.
I mean, I've been portrayed as the anti-Joel guy on here many times, but his body language over the last 4 or 5 games has been get me to the finish line at this point, which I'm a little confused about because I feel like he has this MVP. He's at the finish line, and he just doesn't seem to want to run through it at this point. Do you guys see that at all? Like, he's there.
This has been a lot of the Sixers fans' problems with Joel Embiid for a long time, and something that I push back on with people is that they say he's too concerned about social media. He's too concerned about the MVP, which all of a sudden, when, like you just said, Adam, it's in his grasp, and it seems like now he doesn't care. So I think a lot of it is, I don't know how focused he is. I don't know how much of a championship, like, I don't know how much it means to him to win a championship. He can say it all he wants, but then you see him and you see the body language, and it's the same story every year. Look, it's not the same to every guy. Not every guy wants to go out there and bust his ass 110% to win an NBA title. Some guys are content with going home after the second round. And I'm not saying that's Joel Embiid, but I'm not saying it's not. I think he falls somewhere in the middle of that category.
I just feel like I've seen the killer instinct come out of him in regular season games, especially big ones where he wants the ball down the stretch and he has to have the big moment. I've seen that come out of him, that monster of I want this, I'm going to go get it. But to me, in the biggest moments of his career, it feels like he falls backwards a little bit. And I'm talking the game sevens against Atlanta, the game 7 against Toronto. I'm talking right now when he has the opportunity to grab this MVP, and all of a sudden now, it seems like he can't get close. Me at 28 the other night, but it was not an impressive 28 the other night. And it just doesn't seem like he has that. And maybe he's coasting to get to the finish line healthy, or maybe he's hurt. But it just doesn't seem like when that big moment is in front of him, he wants to go grab it outside of like a regular season game in January.
Well, he was only 11 for 25, I believe, last night in the Milwaukee game, which, hell, if I was playing, I'd take that. But he's Joel Embiid, so he's got to do better. But it doesn't hurt him. I mean, it doesn't help him that we've already talked about the Jokic situation, but the fact of the matter is he did not play that second game. He played against Giannis last night and took the L, not only from a team perspective, but also individually. So that's not helping his cause as far as MVP is concerned. But I will say that I think he's got it in him, and I think he wants to win a title. I don't think that's a doubt for me. But what I do think is he's a sensitive dude, and I think that in his mind, he probably is the kind of person that gets in his own way sometimes. And I think that he may in his mind be like, okay, it's playoff time, but what's going to happen this year? Am I going to get hurt again? Is Harden going to get hurt again? Are we going to run into a buzzsaw of a team? Is someone going to figure out a triple team that's going to help, lock me up in games? What's going to be the situation this year that stops us? Instead of having the mindset of, I'm going to eat everybody.
Right.
And I think that's the concerning thing about Embiid. I don't think his heart's a question. I think that his mind is the question.
I don't think, Chris.
I agree. That was well said. Sorry. Go ahead.
I don't think he has that. Like, what do you think the tone is at the practice facility after, like a game 6 loss or heading into game 7? Like, do you think Embiid is all over those guys, yelling at them?
No, but that's my point. That's my point.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That's what's wrong. Like, he needs to be that guy.
Yeah, his heart's there, but I don't know if his mind. Like, I think in his mind, I don't know. I'm not going to say
the two words you're looking for are mental toughness. Mental toughness is what you're looking for.
I think that he's waiting for a shoe to drop every year since it's dropped every year at this point. And I think that it's hard for him probably mentally to get as dominant physically as he can be because of those previous situations. Now, again, we've talked about it on here, and I've been the first one to say that the past can't control anymore. And I don't know, all these teams in professional sports now have team psychologists and things like that. I don't know if he talks to them or not at all, in terms of trying to figure that out for himself. But if he doesn't, I think he probably should, because I think that's a big issue that he probably has going forward with these playoff races is, the deeper they get, what's going to happen now.
Right. But that's where I say I have concerns about how much does it really mean to him to win a title, because he will be doing these things and taking these proactive steps in now his 6th or 7th season in the NBA to be that leader, to be that vocal guy in the locker room. And this is why we brought PJ Tucker in. So I'm interested to see in the postseason if PJ Tucker steps up and takes that role and is the vocal guy at the practices and the press conferences and during games when they start to slack off, when we see these runs where they give up 41 points in the first quarter to Milwaukee. I know it's a whole different game and a whole different atmosphere, and
they shot like 80%.
I know, but I want to see if he's going to be that guy, kind of like Draymond Green is for the Warriors.
Yeah. I also think that, I think that this team, I know I've said before, I just think that I think it's going to click. I really do. I just feel like when we get there, it's going to click. I still believe, but I understand the frustration. I understand the concern, but the future hasn't been here yet. So we can't really just assume if that's what we do, we can't blame him for doing it. You know what I'm saying? We can't blame if I'm accurate with my assumption of what Embiid's mental thought process with the postseason is. if it's similar to the majority of Philadelphia Sixers fans, we can't necessarily. I mean, obviously he has a controlling interest.
Right. That's the difference.
But at the same time, we have to like hope that he can overcome that, but we can't necessarily blame him for that when we feel the same way.
No, I disagree. Like for me, in the Milwaukee Bucks locker room right now, they're saying we could beat Boston, we could beat Philly, we can win.
They're saying they could beat Boston. They just got their doors blown off.
I'm saying they believe that they can. They have championship DNA. I'm not saying they will. In Boston's locker room, they're saying we could beat Milwaukee, we could beat Philly. In Philly's locker room, it's probably like, I don't know.
Hey, how's the Achilles, James?
Yeah, how you feeling?
Well, that's what I was going to go to next, Al. Remember, James has a history in the playoffs as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to add one thing. We haven't really trashed our boy Doc this year. He's actually been okay. He sucked last night.
Who's the bench in the? I mean, assuming it's an 8-9 guy bench max, even though in the Hawk series 2 years ago he played 28 dudes in that series, but I would imagine it would be Melton, Paul,
sure.
Niang just because of offense, and McDaniels for defense. Would you agree with that?
I think that's what it starts with. I don't think that's what it ends with.
The House might find his way in the line.
I think House ends up getting a lot of the forward minutes in the playoffs.
I'd be fine with House instead of Niang and having McDaniels still play defense.
What has McDaniels done to earn any minutes?
Defense.
He sucks.
I think he's played solid defense. I think that if you put him on a lineup on the court with Embiid and Maxey or Embiid and Harden, guys that can score the ball in the, when you're in the playoff situation, I think that his, shortcomings on offense are a little bit hidden if he can play strong defense. Same with Paul Reed, same thing.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say Jalen McDaniels he's like B-ball Paul number 2.
Well,
exactly.
Paul at least has played playoff games. To me, Jalen McDaniels has not played a meaningful NBA game in his entire career, and Danuel House has. Danuel House has been in playoff games,
but he's never had the opportunity.
I understand, but sometimes you got
against them.
Sometimes that moment can be the first time through can be a little bit bigger than you want it to be.
So you see what you got against Brooklyn
last night. Listen, you've bashed Paul all year. Paul's playing great basketball
right now. He is playing good.
Yeah,
but this ain't the playoffs either.
No, but listen, last night he has 8 and 10 and playing well, and then Doc subs him out for 2 minutes in the fourth quarter to go small and leaves Tucker and McDaniels on the front line, and they just get destroyed. Why would you take McDaniels out? McDaniels has no points. He's 0 for 4 with 3 rebounds. Paul's taking it at Giannis. You see him taking it at Giannis?
I did. But you know what? That's what you could be looking at it. That could be a look into the future. PJ at the 5 and McDaniels at the 4.
They won't survive. They won't survive.
That better be a future with like only a minute per game. I don't see that happening.
What has Paul Reed done the last 3 weeks to not just be the backup center exclusively?
No, listen, I agree with that. I'm just saying, knowing Rivers and knowing how he relies upon veterans and knowing why they got PJ Tucker, it would not surprise me to have him as the backup 5 in the playoffs.
He just hates Paul Reed without passion.
We can't even rebound as it is, and you're going to put a guy 6'5" as a center.
All right. That's what I mean. Like when you play small ball 5, and you need to have other 4 guys who can really rebound. The Sixers don't have enough guys who can really rebound around a small ball 5.
Exactly.
Paul Reed's the best rebounder on the team.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially on the offensive boards.
He might be. Allow me to start though to begin the. I'm comfortable now to be in a situation where I'm going to push the Danuel House train.
Yeah, me too.
I think Danuel House has earned legitimate minutes in the playoffs for this team. He's a veteran. He can shoot a little bit. He's very athletic. He can guard a little bit. I'm comfortable with him being on the floor in the playoffs. You talk about McDaniels and the lack of experience and this and that. If that's the way you want to go and you want to say he's not experienced, I don't know how he gets experience, by the way, at this point. But if you don't feel comfortable to play him, I'd rather have House playing than Niang. Niang, I'll say it. I'll die on that hill. Niang cannot play big minutes in the postseason in the National Basketball Association. He can.
What's big minutes to you?
Second half of games from the second round on.
Okay, so you're not even talking like number of minutes. You're talking about any minutes.
any minutes. He can't. He's a turnstile. He can't rebound. He can't create. If he's not shooting well, which in the playoffs he'll have a guy locking up on him, he's not going to be able to contribute anything positive on the court. At least McDaniels can lock some guys up and give him fits on defense. Niang can't do that.
No, you're not wrong. They have a problem at the forward spot. They have a problem there.
So if you give House those minutes, I'm okay with that. What you can't do though is you can't play House. You can't play House. You can't play House. And it's funny to say that. And have PJ at the 5 too. That you can't do.
Yeah, Paul's got to be the backup 5. Paul's been fine.
Yeah, you can't have a lot out there with Tobias, House, Tucker, and whatever guards you want to put out there when Embiid's sitting at. You can't do that.
Well, you would think again that second quarter, beginning of the second quarter when Embiid sits, you would hope that it would be like Harden, Melton, House, maybe Niang or McDaniels, whoever's playing better, and Reed. Like that's the 5.
Now, if we're in a situation where I hate to overlook teams, but I really think Brooklyn is a great matchup for the Sixers. But when you go to the Boston series, potentially, you're down 10 in the third quarter. You need offense. That's the only instance where I see it fair to play Niang, because you just want to hope he can get hot and get open and play him with the starters. So have him in specifically like for Tobias in a situation or PJ in a situation, as long as Embiid's still on the floor, and give it a shot. Other than that, for me, he can't play after the first round.
Can I say one
and he will.
positive thing?
He will, but
I know I'm the negative guy on this podcast. Is Tyrese Maxey the best shooter in the league outside of Steph Curry?
Dude, he's awesome.
Yeah,
Dude, it's a layup when he shoots a 3.
I mean, last year he was what, 3rd, 4th, something like that. He was definitely top 5 in the league 3-point percentage last year.
He's up to 43% this year, and he had a major dry spell when he came back from his foot injury.
Yeah, he was down around 35 or 36 at one point this season.
Is Hamlin his coach too?
Incredible run.
Is who?
Is Drew Hamlin his coach?
No,
Also? Okay.
He works out with he was working out with Ben Simmons in the offseason that one year.
Well, that ain't helping him do nothing. So that's not even.
Taking notes of what not to do.
There was a point in the third quarter they kicked it to him in the corner and he was open, and I yelled at the TV. I said layup, and it's just cash, dude.
Yeah.
He's
tremendous. But we got to get him going against, and that's another guy. Reason why you got to play Boston hard tomorrow. He's got to get some confidence against those guys. He's got to step up. He has not had a good run against this Celtics team. He's got to get it going against them.
No doubt. So again, we'll play out the string these 4 games, and then we're going to have some playoff basketball on our hands. And it's a gut-wrenching time of year. We thought, you guys thought playoff baseball was hard. Playoff basketball is just as hard, especially with this freaking team.
Yeah. So
we will preview the entire playoffs next week. Season ends Sunday?
Easter Sunday, yeah.
So then the playing games would be what, like Wednesday, Thursday, maybe?
Yeah, I think the playoffs officially start, I want to say that the next weekend, right? Isn't it normally the next weekend, or is it that Monday or Tuesday?
I thought it was
the Wizards that one year on a Sunday, I think was game 1.
Yeah, so I'm going to guess the playing games are probably maybe Wednesday, Thursday of that week, and then the first round would start Saturday. That's probably my guess.
Yeah, they wouldn't start on a weekend, I would imagine.
Yeah. So anything else in closing before we move on to segment 2?
Like I said, I know it sounds like hollow and like where are you getting this from, but I just got a feeling that they're gonna be a force once playoff time starts. They're gonna get hot again. These guys got something to prove. Embiid's got something to prove. Harden's got something to prove. They're our 2 biggest and best players, and they've got chips on their shoulders. Hopefully they have chips in their hands.
They have chips, yeah.
The playoffs, but we'll see. I don't think Al looks like he's confident in that.
No, none of that's going to matter if they're not healthy. It doesn't matter because all these guys have something to prove. All these guys.
To be fair,
everybody's hurt, and
to be fair,
82 games.
Harden looked a lot better against Toronto. He had some life in him against Toronto. It looked like he had a little juice back.
And he had a couple shots last night.
Yeah, but he looked like he was half-assing it. I don't think it was an injury last night. I just think he was half-assing it. Defensively, he was like not paying attention to anything.
Yeah, and after that first quarter, I thought they packed it in.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, they split with the Bucks, so they got to split this year. It's not like they dominated us. They got to split. I still like that matchup if we play them in a series. They got us last night, but it is what it is. But like I said, those guys got chips on their shoulder. I think it's going to pay off for us in the long run.
And I mentioned the Boston game. The Bucks were coming off a 40-point loss. They weren't going to come out and lay another egg. It just wasn't going to happen. So if the Sixers weren't focused and keyed up, they were going to get killed, and that's what happened.
Chris, would you take Caitlin Clark on this team for the playoff run?
Listen, we got to get a WNBA team ASAP because Beckers and Caitlin, or was it
Caitlin Clark
are out there, and could you imagine? Like, yo, man, I was the first thing I watched the game in full Friday night.
Yeah, so did I, man. I watched the Final Four game of the championship. They were good games. They were good games.
So last night's game was the highest watched women's college game. I think women's basketball game period of all time.
It was like 9 million.
9 million people watched it in like for whatever amount of time it was to satisfy the stat, but 3 million tuned in at some point in that game.
Yeah. Well, here's what helped the women's game exponentially is Steph Curry. Because the argument was always they're not athletic enough, they don't dunk. But now the whole game is all threes anyway, and women can sure as hell shoot the rock. So
Clark is clean.
She's special.
She's on. But shout out to Angel Reese, Bayou Barbie, and LSU.
What was your take on that? You were on board with that?
About what with her doing? Yeah, I'm on board with it.
100%.
Here's the deal, right? Her people that say that what her doing it and Caitlin Clark doing it. It's not apples to apples because Clark wasn't doing it in her opposition's face when the game was over. Like Reese was doing it, the game was over. She was doing it for a prolonged amount of time, trying to get a reaction out of Caitlin Clark. But at the end of the day, so what? They're competitors. They just played 40 minutes for the national title. To go on as a national media pundit or anybody, and to call her classless is just an idiotic, just ridiculous.
And we know
classless is not the word, but to me, my issue with it is it felt all like it was pre-contrived. I don't know if that's a word, but to me it was, how can I get my name out there to be on social media? How can I exceed my, and it wasn't about like being with her teammates in that moment. It was, let me have my moment and like continuously get in this girl's face. But again, if it's in the moment, I have no problem with it. I just felt it was all,
you know what? In her defense, I think it was a little premeditated because guess what? She's just as good as Caitlin Clark, and she got no. She got no. Who won the title? She got no pub at all the entire tournament. She set a record for double doubles in an NCAA season. You didn't hear one word about that until they won the championship.
Yeah, tell that. Guess what? Nobody's watching that game except for Caitlin Clark. Nobody's watching that game.
That's great, but guess what? Nobody's saying her name, and she's legitimately one of the top 10 players in the nation.
That's fine. She's not Caitlin Clark. You said she's better than Caitlin Clark.
I didn't say she's better.
She's just as good.
She's just as good. I said she's just as good. She just won the title.
No, she's not.
Who won the title? Who has the ring?
Yeah, there's some beef on them women courts now, though. You saw the Texas girl a week or so ago told the girl in the line, like, call me bitch one more time. Right? I don't know if you saw that clip on Twitter, and they had the lip reader person, and that's what she said to the girl. Then you had the Memphis girl who punched in the women's NIT, punched the girl in the line at the end of the game. These girls out here, they getting it a little bit nowadays.
They're not playing anymore. They're not playing.
No, and I'm here for it.
That makes Caitlin Clark special and what allows men to appreciate her game more. There are so many men, and again, not us in our 30s, our late 30s anymore. Let's say a mid-20s guy who watches these games being like, I'm better than X amount of girls, right or wrong.
You like, do the same thing.
If it's a 6-foot power forward, be like, I could bust her up or she'd be on the court. They watch Caitlin Clark and they're like, nah, I can't do that. I can't guard that.
Guys, you used to say that stuff all the time.
Yeah, no, listen, and I'm not saying there's some cases where it's right. Maybe not these girls in the national championship team, but in our 20s, there are girls who played Division I basketball that we could play with. I'm not saying we're better than, but we could play with.
No chance. No chance.
That's not right at all.
No chance.
I
worked with a dude that went to UCF. Okay. And he used to play against the women's team because the coach used to have them play men to get used to get like the roughness that they would endure in a D1 game. And he said, no shot. Like they were so much better.
There's no
man.
I'm not saying they're not better. I'm just saying you could be on the court with them.
That's just
do what? Watch them beat you by 21-0?
It wouldn't be 21-0.
Yeah, I could be on the court.
Disrespectful to just assume because they're women that you'll be able to compete with them.
Chris, he just congratulations. That's the new worst take of this pod.
There's no way.
The John Stockton take just took a back seat.
The what take?
The John Stockton that he wouldn't be good at the NBA these days. That just got moved down to number
on that. Same thing.
down to number 2.
That's the same thing.
That is a wild take, Seltzer. No way.
From an athletic standpoint, you could absolutely stay on the floor.
Not a shot.
I think you're better.
Not a shot.
I didn't say you were better. So you could stay on the floor.
Who's that? Who? Us athletically? Or is that what you're saying?
Not now, but maybe when we were
I don't think
in
ever.
college. When we were in college.
Not a shot.
That's
maybe not you
that's
two.
disrespectful.
Maybe not you two.
That's disrespect. Yeah. No, come on.
Crazy.
Stop. That's disrespectful to say that about these girls. These girls can play. And I watched.
And again, I'm not talking LSU Iowa national championship. I'm talking the median team, the mid-level team.
Dude, I've been in the gym with the Temple girls players before, and not playing with them, but watching them up close, like on the sidelines. The speed of the game and the IQ of the game is way ahead of 95% of men who are just out here playing pickup.
IQ, no way. Speed, I don't know. Well, we're never going to know. We'll never going to know.
I mean, you could issue open challenge or something.
If Caitlin Clark wants to come and play me one-on-one, I would say yes 15 years ago, but I can't do it now.
But seriously, though, that's what I've been thinking about all weekend. If we got a WNBA team ASAP and got one of them two or both, like, sign me up. I'm in.
Yeah, I'd go watch a game.
Now, are there rules with the women's college basketball as far as going to the WNBA?
Yeah, she can't come out. She has to play another year of college.
Okay.
They have to go 3 years in college.
Okay.
So
they better get together and get this new team up.
But they said, I mean, again, this is the problem with women's basketball. They said she'll make more money on NIL next year than she would if she was a rookie in the WNBA.
Dude, Bronny's making. I think they said Bronny's going to make close to $10 million next year.
Good for him.
That's insane.
Good for him.
He's making more than dudes in the NBA are now. He's making more than Furkan.
All on his
double
name.
what Furkan's making.
Rightfully so.
And playing more than Furkan.
Yeah, rightfully so.
But we're going to jump into segment 2. We've always liked to talk golf on this podcast, and it's we're right before one of the biggest events of the year. So we are going to have our Masters preview in segment 2. So stay tuned. Welcome back to segment 2, where we are going to talk Masters. And I'm going to let Al lead the segment as he is our golf guru, and we're going to get to answer his questions this week.
Adam, you dropped the ball, first of all, by not starting the segment off with a hello, friends.
I have something more up my sleeve that I didn't tell you about yet.
Welcome to segment 2 of the 3 in the Keystone podcast. I'm joined here by Chris Guest and Adam Seltzer. I am Al Nance, and we're gonna talk a little bit Masters here. For those of you listening, it's a lot of people's favorite golf tournament of the year. A lot of people they would consider it the biggest golf tournament of the year. I don't know why that is. Do you think it's because it's first, or do you think it's just because of the name and everything around it? The
aura of it, I think, is bigger than
right.
I would say the aura wise, it's the Masters and the Open.
To me, it has to do with the fact that it's just at Augusta, like Chris is saying, what comes along with Augusta, the fact that it's the only tournament that's at the same course every single year. Obviously, by tournament I mean major, so you're familiar with it, the prestige that comes along with it, and I think being first also helps. I think it's symbolizes spring.
Yeah,
it symbolizes what's to come. Yeah. I think all those things kind of add up to make it the most popular event of the 4. And again, the other part is, in the Northeast, you have the U.S. Open, the Open, and the PGA all come in the middle of the summer, and people have stuff to do. Granted, this is Easter weekend, just happens to be, but beginning of April, the weather's not great. There's more of an opportunity to sit down and watch it compared to people who are on vacation or going to baseball or this and that.
But if you remember in the COVID year, when it was in November, it was still very, it seemed to be just as big to me, at least as a casual perspective, but it didn't seem to have fallen off at all by being in November versus in April.
Well, the same thing. Nobody's doing anything in November, especially during COVID. I don't know. There wasn't much going on,
yeah,
regardless. So people were jonesing for anything at that point in time.
Absolutely. We were watching, who were we watching? Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, and we were watching anybody that was willing to get in front of a camera at that point.
Yeah.
We were watching people do Peloton rides at one point during COVID. That was a wild time.
Yeah, Peloton took that L ever since.
Yeah, that stock is
It's going on. Yeah.
Listen, this body's been built by Peloton, so
That's not that ain't it.
if you're watching on YouTube, I'll stand up at the end of the segment. All right, so last year, Scotty Scheffler wins the tournament. Not a total runaway, but almost one of those where like it never really felt like he was in danger of losing it. I think the closest it got was in the fourth round. Him and Cam Smith were kind of trading blows, but then Smith dropped one in Rays Creek on 12, which pretty much slammed the door shut. Do you guys? I know Adam. I know you probably remember. Chris, you remember who the runner-up last year was?
No.
Adam.
Yeah, so I was doing some research today. I was the traditional Rory McIlroy backdoor top 10. What did he shoot on Sunday? 65?
Yeah, he went he was 64. He went 8 under on Sunday, which included that hole out from the bunker on 18 when him and Morikawa went the back-to-back hole outs from the bunker.
Yeah.
So yeah, Rory gets that sneaky runner-up finish last year, and Rory's he's a lot of people's picks to win it this year.
Yeah, second
Good
highest
reason.
odds.
There's a tier right now of golfers, which includes Rory, and also Scotty Scheffler, and then also Jon Rahm, who have basically just separated themselves from the pack. And when I say the pack, I mean everyone. I mean even the Justin Thomases of the world, the Jordan Spieths. I mean anybody you can think of. These three guys have kind of separated themselves. So one of the big stories coming into this season is obviously every year at the Masters, will Rory finally complete the McIlroy Slam, where he's only a green jacket away from winning all 4 majors. But Scotty Scheffler can become only the 4th golfer in golf history to win back-to-back green jackets in consecutive years, which would join obviously Tiger Woods, Jack Nicklaus, and then Sir Nick Faldo as the only other 3 to do that. Because of that, I mean, I really wouldn't bet on that because of history. I'm not the kind of guy, I don't even bet on necessarily guys to win it who've won it in the past, because it's just hard to win 1, let alone 2. What do you guys think about that?
I disagree. It's always hard to go back to back, especially in golf these days with all the talent that's out there. But I look at a guy like Scheffler, who seems to be at the peak of his game right now. And I look at what he's done this year. He won the Waste Management. What did he do the year before? He won the Waste Management.
Yep.
The Arnold Palmer Invitational, he won it last year. What did he do this year? He didn't win, but he was in contention. Last year at the match play, he won the match play. This year, he's runner-up at the match play. Augusta has always been a golf course that just suits certain players, and it doesn't suit other ones. And you always see the same type of names pop up on the leaderboard from year to year. Even if players aren't playing particularly well, they just seem to find their way around Augusta. And Scotty Scheffler has shown that he's a guy that on certain courses, he's ready to show up, and he's done it on repeated rounds this year. I don't see any reason why he's not in contention at 7-1 or whatever his odds are. I wouldn't bet him. But if you ask me who's got the best chance of winning out of the 3, Jon Rahm, Rory McIlroy, Scotty Scheffler, I'm going Scotty Scheffler all day.
I don't disagree with you. If you ask me as a bettor, and again, 7-1 is just a little too low for my standards of betting, but if you ask me as a bettor on Sunday, who do I want going into Sunday with a 1-stroke lead or potentially 1-stroke back, it's Scotty Scheffler. And to me right now, it's not even close. And go ahead.
Nails. He just doesn't look like anything affects him on the golf course.
Yeah, he's second on the tour right now this season in strokes gained total, only behind Jon Rahm. But what stands out to me is when you look a little bit deeper at his strokes gained numbers, he's doing it without necessarily a really hot putter, because he's barely gaining any strokes with the putter, but he is just crushing it off the tee, crushing it with his approach shots. And if there's 2 things you need, I know a lot of times people get lost in this. Well, the Masters, Augusta is a place where you can be wild off the tee and you can miss and you can get it out of that straw. But I disagree with that, because there's some holes, and especially what stands out to me is the par 5 13th, which is one of the most important holes every year. If you don't put it in that correct spot on the fairway where you're kind of center cut in the fairway where you can go for it in 2, that's a huge loss. Like, you got to make birdie on that hole And historically, you got to go at least 8 under on the par fives in those 4 days if you're going to have a chance to win it all.
Well, what do you think about the changes this year? It might not be a birdie hole this year.
Yeah, they added 25, what was it, 25, 30 yards, something like that.
Yeah, so now people are going to have a lot longer shots in off a downhill lie. And it could make some players lay up, they're saying, instead of going for it in 2 every time.
And not only the distance, but I'm sure you've looked at the weather. Well, I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know if you have. We are in for a monsoon. It's supposed to rain, and it's supposed to rain a lot throughout the weekend, Thursday through Sunday.
So has there been any research done either by you two or by the pundits in terms of, when you have horse racing and it's about horses that are good in the mud? Are there any guys that are good with the irons or whatever in these kind of conditions?
So, Chris, when you say either you guys or the pundits, that's repetitive because I would However, the prevailing thought, Chris, and I don't have the statistics to back this up and whether or not it's it actually is proven to be true, but the thought is that you take a lot of the European guys, the guys that are used to kind of playing in crap weather, that it doesn't really phase them. So your boy Tyrrell Hatton, he's a thought.
I got a guy. Well, I'll wait until our prediction part, but I got a guy that would fit that mold. Go ahead.
So he's an immediate thought that comes to mind, even though he's said it before and he said it again. He doesn't play well at Augusta, but he says he hates the course. But that's a guy that he's a curmudgeon. He doesn't like anything. So even if he did like it, I don't think he was going to admit to it. A guy like Shane Lowry is a guy that whose name pops up pretty often when you hear about rainy weather. Justin Rose not necessarily fits that mold, but again, he's a guy. He's an English guy. He's played well at Augusta many times in the past, finished runner up, and possibly a Tommy Fleetwood, Golf Jesus, who's kind of having a little bit of a resurgent year. Could be a guy to have your eye on. Not necessarily my cup of tea, any of those guys, and I would have to do a little bit of a deeper dive to see if they do potentially perform better in the bad weather. But to me, the bad weather just brings in the long shots more into play, because the last time we had really, really bad weather at a Masters for a prolonged period of days, Zach Johnson won the green jacket.
Does it make for heavier clubs when you're playing in the rain?
What do you mean heavier clubs?
As far as like the impact on the club from like the conditions on the with the grass, turf, and things like that.
To be honest with you, as long as it's not pouring while they're playing, it makes the golf course easier for these guys because the greens are softer and you could hit balls at flags and you don't have to worry. When it's firm and fast, that ball hits the green and it can run any sort of ways, especially given the slopes on the green. But when it's softer, it kind of just hits and sticks. So for these guys, when it's soft, they're going with flag hunting, and you could expect the scores to be lower than what they usually are. Again, assuming they're not playing in 20, 30-mile-an-hour wind or something along those lines. If they're getting the rain overnight and they're not playing in the rain,
and a soppy green would benefit putters. Is that right?
Well, yeah, it doesn't because it slows the greens down. But
that's what I'm thinking.
These guys, though, they don't really like slower greens because they're so used to playing on the fast greens.
Right.
Well, that's why I say heavier clubs, because of that. Like for instance, they have to hit the putts harder because the ground it's more saturated on the green.
Yeah, it changes your game. It changes your game completely, and it brings a lot of luck into play too, because it depends what's going on at the time that you're about to hit the ball. Like just something as small as water being in between your club and the ball when you go to strike that ball can take 10 yards off of the flight. It can send the ball into a different direction. So a lot of it is luck when you start talking about weather. So it's really hard to predict.
Even luck as far as what time you go off on the golf course. Are you going to be playing in the rain, or are you going to be playing after the rain?
100%.
And ultimately, I would imagine, well, we all know from experience, but wind ruins everything. So if there's wind involved with that rain, that's the real X factor. And even without rain, the wind is the true X factor. You can get by in the rain with not just golf, a lot of other sports outdoor sports, but wind will just ruin everything.
These guys would rather play in the rain than play in the wind.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So I guess we can talk about this year's tournament. Like I said, there's kind of 3 favorites at the top. You got Scheffler, Rahm, and Rory McIlroy. And then you have a bunch of names, right underneath. You got the Patrick Cantlays, Xander Schauffele, Max Homa, Colin Morikawa, Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth. A lot of guys are playing pretty well that have experience at Augusta. And Adam was talking about experience earlier. I saw a stat. I don't know if you've ever been to datagolf.com, Adam. It's a great website. But they put up a blog that measured the strokes gained based on Masters experience. And what it showed is if you have between about 6 and 12 years experience at this course, you tend to gain a pretty substantial amount of strokes on the field. So there's like a sweet spot there where if you've played it a number of times, you know the ins and outs, you know where to hit it, where to avoid, you know, kind of the slope of the greens, you know, where to, you know, where in the fairway, because we hear about the undulations all the time. You know, it's funny. Undulation is one of those words you only hear in golf, or, you know, it's like ensuing kickoff in football.
Right.
You only hear that in football.
Is this what you're doing on these prep periods at school? Looking at these data golf sites.
You can't call me. Listen, they might be listening to this week.
Mr. Ryan, can you do a coverage for? Nah, hold up. I'm doing this data golf.
So, Chris and Adam, before we get into picking winners, I have three strikes, three things that I kind of look for each year when I think about the winners. So, first of all, you can't pick a debutante. Okay, you can't pick a guy where it's his first year playing the course. Now, we've had some guys recently that have played really well their first time out. Will Zalatoris comes to mind, but they don't cross the finish line. And I think it's the pressure is just too much Sunday, whether they're in the lead or within the lead. It's a pressure unlike any that they've ever felt before.
Do me a favor, Al. Explain this to people who are listening, or Seltzer, you too. Why Augusta is looked at as some sort of a daunting or challenging course, especially for folks who are new to playing it in the tournament versus other courses that are out there on the tour.
It's a great question. And I think what you'll find from most people will tell you, you know, Al mentioned earlier, you know, for the most part, it's not that penal off the tee compared to some other courses as far as rough length. You can't even really say rough. It's technically the second cut. But it's long. So you got to be able to drive the ball particularly long. The greens and around the green complexes are very, very complex.
Yeah.
So you're going to have humps. You're going to have, you know, Al mentioned undulation. You're going to have firmness. That's probably where the most teeth come in and where the course knowledge really rears its head, is knowing how to play those undulations. However, there's opportunities to score. The par fives are not particularly hard. That's where you really need to make your hay. But there's bogeys out there that can bite you. You know, 5 is a really difficult hole. It's long. They lengthened it recently. The par threes on the front are not easy. 1 is tough.
One can start your day. You can start your day with a double bogey on Thursday. And obviously you can bounce back from that. And these professionals, these guys know that. But boy, what a debilitating way to start your Masters, with a bogey or double bogey on the first hole of the weekend.
And 10 is usually 10 and 11 are two of the two hardest holes in the golf course. If you have to start on the back, although I don't know, does anybody start on the back nine? I don't think they do that for the Masters.
No, they don't.
They don't do that for the Masters.
No, and you know, Adams, look, you need to go 8 under or better on the par 5. So I think there's a little bit of pressure to do that too. Since 2009, the average for the winner on the par 5s has been they've gone under 8.7 strokes under par on those par 5s. The last guy to win it without going under par on the par 5s for the weekend, Danny Willett. Danny Willett shot even par on the par 5s and then went 5 under on everything else.
He got helped out a little bit.
He did. Chris, here's another example, though. So number 12, which is my favorite hole in the course, is the little par 3 where you go over Rays Creek.
That the bridge one?
What's that?
Over the bridge?
Yep. So if I told you that we were going to go play around and no, we're coming up to this hole, it's a par 3, 155 yards. Oh, nothing to it. This hole just boggles the minds of these guys. The amount of guys that leave it short, put it in the creek, send it long, end up in a bunker, and then they pitch out of the bunker, they put it into the other bunker, or they put it into the creek from there. It happens every year. This hole is a game changer every year, and it's just a little short par 3, 155, but the experience comes into play. You have to understand that the way the wind is whipping on the tee box, it's not necessarily the way the wind is moving over the green because of the way the course is set up. And this is what they all had in mind when they made this course.
Yeah,
So,
par threes freak me out personally. I would be the one that would get a 5 on that.
so
Love
let me
par
tell you this, Al, you mentioned the wind, and actually I was, as you can see, I'm in a hotel room. If you're watching on YouTube, I was driving up to Hartford today. I was listening to a little bit of PGA Tour radio, and there was the guys on there were talking about their round at Augusta recently. And the hole you're talking about is 12, and they were playing 11, which goes the same direction as 12. And the wind on 11 was directly in their face. And they got to the 12th tee. It was 155 yards. And the guy says to his caddy, let's play it about 170. It's the same direction as the last hole. And the caddy goes, well, actually, what happens here is you think the wind's blowing in, but it actually deflects off of these trees and it turns around and it's actually playing downwind. And the dude was like, what are you talking about? And he was like, just hit one club less than you were going to hit. And he said, yeah, I hit an 8-iron to like 12 feet. He was like, I could not believe what direction the wind was blowing compared to what we felt on the hole before that.
Yeah, he would have sent that thing into the trees if he wanted to hit. So the second story though that I have this week is the live guys, and we can keep this brief, but I think it's a mistake to just write these guys off because it's still possibly
Who's writing them off?
a lot of people are, and here's why. So the reason why is because they've only played 3 tournaments, and they're playing these 54-hole tournaments with, they're playing in shorts. The competition is nowhere near the same level as the competition of, say, a Players Championship that these guys have played in, or a Tournament of Champions.
The intensity of the tournaments are not the same.
Right. The intensity of tournaments, it's not even close, right? So, but, it's still one of the most important tournaments of the year to them. In my opinion, how do we know? We know nothing about these guys' schedules. How do we know they're not spending more time working on the things that they want to focus on leading up to Thursday, right?
I was just about to say that. They have more time to prepare because their schedule allows them to have more time to prepare for it.
Right. So I think it depends on the guy. I'm not worried about a few of these guys. I'm not worried about Cam Smith. I'm not worried about DJ. He's a 2-cent brain anyway. I don't think it matters to him where he's playing. I don't think he knows where he is half the time, him and all.
You say you're not worried about Cam Smith?
I'm not worried about him mentally not being prepared.
Oh, okay.
Right. Bryson looks like he's on another planet these days.
With his logo on his hat now.
Right. Brooks just won a tournament. So I think he comes into this weekend with a little bit of form. But do you guys have any opinions on the live guys? Are you writing them off? What do you got?
So I'm not writing them off, but to me, there's only 2 guys from live that can contend. And I actually have one of them if we're doing picks, if we're playing odds that I have on my list. You mentioned Cam Smith. His history, I mentioned the Augusta history. His history is too good to ignore. I think he's finished his 3 top 10s in 4 appearances at Augusta. Has the short game, which is a big thing. He just hasn't really been in very good form. And his issue when he's not playing good is he can drive it all over the place. And you saw it a little bit last year. I'm not on Cam Smith, but I don't think you can write him off by any means. To me, DJ's the sleeping giant. He's actually played pretty well at live. He has 2 wins over there. I think he had 1 bad tournament in Mayakoba. Other than that, he's been top 15. His history around Augusta is sneaky good. I was looking at it earlier. I think he's got 4 or 5 top 10s in the last 7 years, including a win. And of all the guys who can, you mentioned his 2-cent brain, of all the guys who can just eliminate all the live bullshit that's going on and just zone out and not worry about it, it's DJ.
Yep.
For me, it's those 2. And I don't trust anybody else's form around Augusta. Bryson, you mentioned Bryson's making videos for the Trumpsters out there, for Trump kids.
Dude, what is it? He's such a clown. I've always thought he was a clown.
That's Al's boy. That's Al's boy.
He's such a rat.
That was his boy.
I saw him today getting interviewed, and I saw his little BD hat or whatever he had, the fake ass tiger logo on it. I was like, bro, ain't nobody looking at your hat. Don't nobody care about you, bro.
Yeah, he's
your 700-yard drive that you got.
Who else? I mean, you have Reed and Neiman. Like, what other players do you think can contend from live?
Maybe Abe Answer. He has kind of okay form there, but not that'd be a miracle. Like that's
I like
Taylor
Answer,
Gooch.
but Taylor
Gooch man.
Hello.
I want to see Gooch and Matt Kuchar go at it at the end. Just have Gooch, Gooch, go back and forth.
So that brings me to one more live question. Do you guys have any dream groupings for the first and second round of a combination of PGA and live guys that you'd like to see? Now, Chris, they put them out in threesomes.
Right.
So is there who would your dream threesome of, like, and I'm talking about like this is like wrestling, pro wrestling, like you're putting out there the guys that don't want to be out there with each other. Who would you
I,
have?
I would put. You mean as far as like anybody in the field, or just
Yeah,
like
anybody at all.
Anybody.
Anybody at all.
give me Fred Couples, Phil Mickelson, and DeChambeau, I guess.
Dude,
Poor
DeChambeau
Freddie.
would be pissed, driving at 320 and then Fred driving at like 260.
Well, because you saw what he was saying, I think earlier, and he was like, I got nothing but respect for those guys. My only problem with them is don't disrespect the tour that I've been on and help, support my family on for 40 years.
Yeah.
That's my problem. And that's also code for like, yeah, you nice, but don't talk crap on, like, don't bite the hand that fed you.
Yeah.
And I think that'd be an interesting group. Plus, they're just OGs anyway. Mickelson and Couples going back to back on some 60-year-old or 50-something-year-old trash talk would be awesome. But I really don't have. Look, I can't. You can't talk about a. You can't talk about a tournament without talking about the Tiger in the room. And I'm not saying he's going to win, but where do you think is his ceiling in this tournament based on the conditions, based on how he looked previously so far this year? Where do you think, in your mind, he could potentially wind up in this? He always plays well historically at Augusta. For the most part, he's played well there. Where do you think he can?
Ceiling?
Yeah.
Top 10.
So you don't think he could win the tournament?
If it rains
No.
and that comes into play, I think ceiling is a win.
Woo.
That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking.
It'll take enough of the other guys' distance off the tee and other things that they do can kind of do well now. It takes all that out of the equation.
But Tiger still can drive it out there with them. Distance is not an issue with him.
Yeah, but
this is his stamina.
Yeah, over 4 days is what I was about to say. Over 4 days, can he do it? And can he do it with the accuracy that he needs to do it with? I think rain and wind kind of levels the playing field a little more in Tiger's favor.
I don't know about that. I'm looking at just like, again, this sounds basic, but walking through wet grass and mud is tougher on your body than it is just walking.
You'll find a way to slip and like
yeah, he's gonna take a spill. Look, I'd be shocked if Tiger missed the cut.
Yeah, he's not gonna. I would too.
I think
he'll play well.
I do too. I think obviously if he's in the tournament, I'm rooting for him to win the tournament. But I will say if he doesn't, I'm rooting for a live guy to win the tournament. I don't even care who it is. I just want to see the smoke from a live guy coming in there in Augusta, which is Holy Grail PGA status, stealing the title and the jacket. Like, these guys got to put the green jacket on, my man, at the end.
And Greg, did you see what Greg Norman said? That they're all going to be waiting at the 18th green. All the live guys will be waiting.
It's all NWO straight up.
Dude,
it's going to be they're all going to be in their shorts, little khaki shorts with the high seams, with the music playing in the background.
No, they would pan to the back, like they pan to the locker room. Fred Couples is laying face down with live spray painted on his back.
They're going to spray paint like Barracuda or whatever those team names are that they got.
Adam, who would your grouping be?
Okay, so I have 3 of them. I did the 3 live guys that I like the least. So I'm taking it personal on them. So I have Patrick Reed, and I'm putting him with Kazuka Higa.
Who's that?
Exactly. And I'm putting him with Bernhard Langer, so he gets beat by a 70-year-old man.
Actually, that's a good one. I should have put in the OG group that I had too, Langer. He's one of those, like the 12-foot high putter, isn't it?
Yeah. Langer balls out at Augusta too.
He does.
And then I got Bryson, and I put Bryson with Sandy Lyle and Vijay Singh. And then my last group, I have Phil, and I'm putting Phil with Tiger just to piss Phil off. And then I'm putting him with Mike Weir, so Phil finishes the second best lefty in the group.
Second best lefty, yeah.
Dude, I just think it would be like just the TV element to it and the entertainment if one of those, any of them even, I don't even care who it is. It could be Kevin Na, it could be,
Oh, I know.
it doesn't even, I don't even care.
Oh,
If
if
they do that,
if
that
not,
would just be
dude,
fantastic.
if Kevin Na walked in a 20-foot putt to win it on the 72nd hole of the Masters, I would eat pumped. I have the Sports Illustrated cover hanging up on my wall of Tiger. When he won it, it would get replaced with Na walking that ball in.
And you can't tell me that place at least wouldn't be tempted to turn into the Waste Management Open real quick.
Yeah.
I mean, how you're going to have a lot of gallery, BS gallery claps if that happens versus cheers. If any of those guys won on 18,
it would be interesting to see what the reaction
I
would be.
love this.
I think Augusta stands strong. Like, I think it would just be the normal reaction.
So far, because I watched Cam Smith's presser today, and he was very classy, and so were all the people asking the questions, and he had mentioned a number of times, like, it's like business as usual. No one's bringing it up. No one's saying anything about it as far as among the guys.
Started either though.
Before we get to the winners, the three triple dances, the three-way dances, the triple threat matches I would have would be Rory, Patrick Reed, and Phil. And then I would have Cam Smith with Scotty Scheffler and John Rahm. Because if you remember, Cam and Scotty kind of got into it last year at the end of the season. When Scotty
Was he the one that he walked across his path?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then the ultimate three-way dance, I would have Tiger, Bryson, and Brooks. None of them like each other.
Yeah, dude.
Are Tiger and Brooks boys?
Yeah, now they're not. Because did you see Brooks saying he like texted him on his birthday and he didn't answer him?
Oh yeah, I did see
These
that.
guys are such like petty chicks, man. Like
Bryson's soft. Bryson's soft.
Ridiculous.
All
But
right.
I do. Oh, go ahead.
No, give me your winners.
I was going to say, I find I mean, obviously, if you're talking about if I had to actually put money on it and be like confident in the money I'm putting out, I would pick Rahm. My heart picks Tiger, but I think there's value in a guy who is a European player. Again, we're talking about the conditions, can mash. I think Victor Hovland. I can see Victor Hovland being a sneaky pick here. He's played pretty well this year too.
So Hovland's at 45-1.
Yeah. And I also think that there's value in Koepka. Koepka's played well at Augusta before also.
Yeah.
And if there's going to be a comeback story, we saw Tigers a few years back. Maybe this year Koepka could bring it back.
Brooks is a little bit shorter on the odds.
I think he's 30-1 maybe.
I can get him at 40-1.
Okay.
Chris, we talked about the weather. I think if it rains, it plays into a Victor Hovland type week. Because the weakness of Victor Hovland's game is his chipping and somewhat of his putting, but he can strike the golf ball
he's a master
as well as anybody. And if it's wet and he can go pin hunting,
right,
he can find himself in the mix. But I think
that's what I'm thinking.
He needs that weather to be of that nature. So, Al, I got three names. Again, this is just for the betting market where you can see your value. Listen, there's a name that everybody's talking about this week. I hate riding the train, but I can't get away from Jordan Spieth. I've said many times already, horses for courses. This guy has proven to be an Augusta guy. He fit that same time frame you talked about for 6 to 12 years. Yep. And he's playing well.
Yep.
And he's playing well. And in the last few rounds, he started to putt well, which has been the issue the last 2 years is he can't find his putter. So I like Spieth at 17-1. I mentioned DJ. He's at 29-1. He's another pick of mine. And the third one, I'm going to go out there a little bit just because this guy, he hasn't played well this year. And part of it's been physical ailments. But he's proven to be a big game hunter, and he's shown good form at Augusta, and that's Will Zalatoris.
Oh, he scares me though, man.
He definitely scares me. But at 37-1, he's great value for somebody who's played 2 rounds at Augusta, 2 tournaments. He's finished second. He's finished 6th. Again, the problem this year is he's battling physical problems with his back. But he's also proven that he's been in the U.S. Open in the final group. I think he was in the PGA Championship in the playoffs. He performs well in the big events. Is he worth a small bet at 37-1? I'd give it a shot.
Besides the back, boy oh boy, I know we shared that video of him putting in the match play.
It's always been like that.
Dude, that's bad. I've never seen anything like that. And I think there's a little bit of scar tissue from last season that's in the back of this kid's mind. I'm really, really concerned that that he may potentially be a guy that he's the next Smiley Kaufman before he's the next major winner. I'm really worried, and I love this kid. I love his game. Dude, he looks lost.
I mean, he finished 4th at the Genesis a few weeks ago,
Yeah.
but he hasn't had a good year. I agree with you there.
So to put a bow on it, I'm with you on Spieth. I actually have him at 18-1 right now on Fox Bet, and I just will always take him at Augusta, especially if he's playing well. I mentioned earlier, I kind of have 3 things I look for. I don't pick a debutante, I don't pick a repeat winner, and I look really heavily into recent form, even more so over form at Augusta. But when you have both, I mean, that's just double whammy for me. So Spieth has 3 top 10s in his last 6 starts. He was right there at the top of the leaderboard a couple times. So give me Jordan. I mean, he's always going to turn up another level at Augusta, and he knows where to hit the ball. Another guy who I think a lot of people are probably going to be on this week, and it's a guy that even though I like him personally, I don't think I've ever bet him. At 35-1, give me Max Homa. I'll take a little bit of Max.
About that too. Yeah.
So he hasn't played well at Augusta, 2 missed cuts and a 48th last year, but I believe he's a different guy now. I think he has a different mindset. I think the first 2 years he was pressing, and he said it on podcasts, where the first year it was like a whirlwind, and he was overwhelmed by the moment. And the second year he was trying to prove it a little bit too much, and he pressed and he didn't play his game. He has a win. He has 3 top 10s. He has no missed cuts in his last 6 starts. So give me Max Homa at 35-1. And then just a steady Eddie, a non-sexy name, but a guy with 2 top 10s and 3 starts at the Masters. He has 3 top 10s in his last 7 starts, also no missed cuts. 45-1. Give me a little bit of that Sung J M money.
I love Sung Jae.
Give me a little bit of that Sung J M money. I'm a big believer in value at the Masters, and at 45-1, you can do a lot worse.
I'm shocked you didn't pick your boy J Day.
I have him. That just goes without saying.
Oh,
Sung Jae's a big. I'm a big Sung Jae fan. I thought about him too. In this turn, he's going to get it done at some point. I'm a believer. He's got some majors in him.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a grinder. And right now, if I'm looking at his strokes gain, I mean, he's gaining everywhere. And usually he's a guy that the putter is cold, but he's gaining with the putter right now. So if he can keep those irons together, which when they're right, he's the best iron player in the world when he's hitting them right. I mean, he's sticking it.
He's a very good iron player. I don't know if he's best in the world, but
dude, when he's got it going, he's top 3. It's probably him, Zalatoris, and Morikawa. Morikawa actually, I think, might miss the cut this week. I think he's in danger.
That's a big.
You asked earlier pick, so I had Fitzpatrick.
That's a little bit of a hot take, Al, because Morikawa is isn't he a top 10 odds guy?
He is, but that's more off of his name. I think he's having a lot of headworms right now with his short game. Yeah. He hasn't won in a year and a half. I think that's on the back of his mind. His blow up the world at the Tournament of Champions in January, it didn't look good. I don't know. I don't love him. Jason Day, real quick, Adam. He has a 5th, 19th, 10th, 9th, 5th, 7th, 18th in his last 7 starts. He's gaining strokes all over the course. I love him this week, but I always love him, so I can't put him as an official pick.
He ain't doing it. He'll be top 20.
I'd love it. No, listen, I'm gonna parlay. So friend of the pod, my buddy Chris Pfeiffer, he does a top 20 parlays. I'm gonna put a top 20 parlay in that Jason Day is at the head of that table.
All right.
Wanted to add real quick before we wrap this up, as far as my last 2 cents. I'm looking at the weather forecast for people listening, like, well, what's it supposed to be like? Thursday, the first round it's gonna be hot. It's gonna be close to 90, but it's also going to be a 50% chance of thunderstorms and around 60% humidity. So it's going to be a very stereotypical humid, wet, sticky Georgia kind of day. Yeah. And then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, temperatures plummet. Friday goes to 70, and then Saturday and Sunday, we're looking between, I think, 54 for Saturday and rain, and 64 on Sunday with rain.
They're saying Saturday might be a washout. They might not.
Saturday right now is a 90% chance of rain throughout the day, high at 54. That is going to be hell for golfers.
Yeah.
Especially on that course. That is cold. Cold rain. That's not good for anybody. So especially guys with bad joints.
And for the bettors, I'll say this: don't put too much stock into the weather, because you never know if the day's gonna get delayed and the weather's not actually gonna matter. I got burnt last year with my picks because I tried to base it around who was teeing off when the weather was going to be bad, and then they just
Always.
delayed the first round and all went to shit.
Right. And also the wind, expect between 10 and 15-mile-an-hour winds, especially Friday through Sunday. So
Listen, it's always
It'll be an
a
interesting
good
tournament.
tournament to watch.
Yeah.
Monday's also rain. So if one of those days gets washed out, Monday's also supposed to rain. So that's gonna be interesting to see how they play that out.
I would-
RBC, what's next on deck? The Heritage? The Heritage is shaking in its boots if this thing goes to Tuesday.
I would just, if you're not a golf fan, put $5 on a guy and try to tune in, because it is the highest form of drama on Masters Sunday of the entire golf season, in my opinion.
And when
Something
you're wondering on Thursday and Friday why it's not on TV, don't worry, we all feel the same way because the TV coverage of the Masters is terrible.
Yeah,
But it's
The
available
website-
for streaming.
yeah, the website stepped it up though in recent years.
Yeah, I know.
Masters.com, right?
Yep.
Cheap plug because we're not getting paid, but so but yeah, it's gonna be an interesting tournament.
All right, so we'll be back next week, hopefully reporting on some winners and some cash going into our group. But speaking of cash, Al, you gonna stick around for the last segment, or you?
No, I'm bailing out. So I know you guys are listening to this on Wednesday. UConn's up 22-13 in the first. I got to get out of here and watch this thing on the big screen upstairs.
All right, so he's gonna get out of here. Chris and I are gonna stick with the tone of the weekend, which was
Oh, I'm actually getting a phone call, Adam. I think I might have to bail out also. No, I'm just kidding.
the disappointing start for the Philadelphia Phillies, and we are going to discuss the most disappointing sports moments in Philadelphia over the last handful of years. So if you want to stay happy, I would just sign off now and not listen to segment 3. But if you want to commiserate with us and all the pain that we felt over the last few years, stay tuned for segment 3. Welcome back to segment 3. Chris, just you and I, just like the old days, bud.
Yeah, man. Just like the old days, reminiscing.
Oh, geez. So again, we're going to talk now about some of the more disappointing moments in Philadelphia sports history, based on the tough weekend that was. Chris, we're not doing a draft. We're not doing rankings. We're just going to spew off some of the more disappointing items on our list. And it doesn't have to be a player. It doesn't have to be a team. It could be a moment. And for me, the number one biggest disappointment, and let me defend it, it's the process.
Oh, that's a way to kick this off.
And here's my problem with the process. I supported the idea of the process. It works. We're looking at the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are going through the same thing now without the name, and they're going to be really good. And the problem is the Sixers just fucked it up. They had the first pick in the draft twice. They drafted 2 of the worst number 1 overall picks in basketball in Fultz and Simmons. They drafted Jahlil Okafor at 3. They had so many opportunities to build this team. They had Mikal Bridges in their grasp on the roster. They traded him. They had Jimmy Butler. They let him go. The process put them in such a place to build this perennial contender, to not be stuck in the middle, which is a second round exit. And here we are just being stuck in a second round exit because the only thing that we hit right was Joel Embiid. That was the only thing that we hit right. And we had so many chances and we just screwed it up. And that's what makes it the biggest disappointment, is the fact that the idea of what it was supposed to be worked. We just didn't execute it.
100%. I would love to debate that with you, but I can't. I wish we had the brass now that we have in our management to have those resources to be picking those picks back then, because as much as we love the whole gimmick of Sam Hinkie and the Hinkie died for our sins and the manifesto and all that kind of stuff that was hilarious and awesome, he didn't do us any favors by overthinking everything. He overthought the Okafor pick. He overthought, let's not forget also making that trading Drew Holiday away and getting Nerlens Noel. But that was that was the first move, actually.
That was the first move of the process.
That started right.
Well, they also got a second first. They had 2 first round picks. One was Noel, and then the other one turned into Sarge.
I'd rather have Drew Holiday.
Yeah, in retrospect, but they wouldn't have been as bad. That was the point. They needed to gut him.
Yeah, and I mean, we also had Colangelo, who, I mean, that's a whole conversation in itself between Brian and Jerry and how that played out with the NBA and the Sixers with the whole tanking thing. Um, but the thing is, like, those picks, if we were the GMs, we'd have made those picks. Like, Ben Simmons was a perennial #1 pick that year.
Yep.
He was supposed to be a generational player. Markelle Fultz was a perennial #1 pick that year. He was the perfect fit next to Ben Simmons. These guys just bombed when they got here.
Here's the thing, though, Chris, is yeah, you can say that on paper, but you're not in the room watching the workouts. You're not interviewing these guys. You look at an organization like Boston, who had the #1 pick and saw Fultz and said, well, we'd rather have Tatum. And the Sixers didn't see that.
That's what I was about to say.
Teams that interviewed Ben Simmons that probably may have still picked him in retrospect, but there were red flags with Ben Simmons, and we didn't see them. And again, Brandon Ingram was the alternative, who it is what it is.
We saw the flags with Simmons. We just chose to ignore them and think that he'd be different when he came here and when he got to the NBA.
And Simmons was fine until something happened and he got worse. Like,
well, the way he is as a person was always like, they always say, what's that phrase? If someone shows you who they are, believe them.
Right.
He's shown us who he is since he was 17 years old. He is a very, very much a me first guy. He will quit on you in a minute if you're not doing what he thinks you can do, or if he's not fitting in the way he thinks he can fit in or wants to fit in.
Yep.
And those things have carried over to his adult life and his NBA career. And that's where we are with him now, with Brooklyn pretty much like hand tied to him. They can't get rid of him, which is the problem we would have had. So, and I also think that, like, for me, the Fultz thing was another big situation, because like, we read the same book, the process book that came out a few years ago, and it talks about that whole situation with Fultz and how he had some say one of the worst pre-draft workouts ever. And the scouts of the Sixers, it's reported, said like, hey, we need to think about this again, because this guy's something's not right. And Colangelo was like, too bad, I traded for the guy, I'm going all in with him, this is what we're doing. And of course, the rest is history. But other than, I mean, like, you look at the Okafor pick, that was the only bad pick, I really feel like, because we already had Nerlens, we already had Joel, even though Joel hadn't played yet. We already had bigs.
Yeah.
And we didn't know at the time yet what kind of player Embiid would be. We had the highest ceiling for him, but at the same time, we hadn't really known yet. So I think Hinkie called himself like, well, one of these guys got to be good. And he was right, except for the fact that the other two were really bad and really not, able to be successful in today's league. Even though today's league and the league in 20s, whatever it was, 15, 16, something much different. So their careers weren't going to be conducive to success based on how, the league was turning. And that was the one bad pick, I think. But at the same time,
you have to say the other ones didn't turn out well. At the end of the day, the goal for the process was to win a championship.
Right.
And we are one bad postseason away from them having to gut the whole thing.
And we haven't. The one thing when we started that was, I remember saying it like it was yesterday, we got to do it because I don't want to be the Atlanta Hawks. And if you remember back in those times, Atlanta was like us now. Atlanta kept getting stuck in the second round. They had Horford, they had Josh Smith, they had Lou Williams, they had these guys that were good players, but they couldn't get over the hump. They couldn't get by, LeBron. They couldn't get by. So they just couldn't get over that second round hump. And damned if we're not the Atlanta Hawks.
Yep.
And we did all we were supposed to do, or, as far as to get to the point of getting those picks and those pieces, and we just mismanaged them. And between that or them coming here and forgetting how to play basketball. And that could be a karma thing. Some people would say it's a karma thing.
Maybe it might be. But listen, we've laid the blueprint now. Oklahoma City is on the precipice of showing what the process can do. Oh.
There has to be a movie about the process, one way or the other, just like there was Moneyball. The process, whether it's a failure or ends up being a success, because if Embiid wins a ring, ultimately that's still a win for the process, because he was a main cog in that whole situation. Yeah. Hell, his name is the process.
He is the process. That's his nickname.
Exactly. So, but even if it doesn't pan out where they don't win a ring, that story's got to be told, because there's a lot of juice in that story. And it was definitely a monumental movement. and a polarizing movement, whether you were on board with it or you hated it, but you weren't really in between.
Yep. Why don't you hit me with one of your disappointments?
Man, you can have a whole segment on just that.
Yeah, I know.
Honestly.
We were about to.
I don't even want to talk about anything. I'll keep the Sixers thing going with Bynum.
So I had Bynum on my list with a question mark.
Huh?
I had Bynum on my list with a question mark.
Bynum is the huge disappointment. Bynum came here. Now, in retrospect, if we had Bynum, we wouldn't have gotten Embiid.
That's why I don't have him. Not sure.
Yeah, but at the time, in the vacuum, Bynum was a boss at that time. Coming off playing with Kobe and the whole, like, that was a huge get. Remember, we had the whole thing at the Constitution Center.
Right.
Everybody was there. We thought this was going to be the turning of the corner.
So if you remember, that was the 2012 offseason.
Right.
That was after we were the 8th seed in the playoffs. Derrick Rose gets hurt in the first round.
Right.
We beat Chicago, and then we take Boston to 7 in the semifinals.
Right.
It was Drew Holiday, Thaddeus Young, Iggy.
So you love squad.
And they're like, we're going all in, and they make this trade for Bynum, and they give up Iguodala and Vucevic, who was in his second year, and maybe a couple draft picks. I think at least one first-round pick. And, dude, we were set, we thought. And Andrew Bynum doesn't play a game.
Never got close to playing a game.
He was
never
bowling.
even got dressed in the building.
Crazy.
But he did bowl, though. He could
crazy.
Yeah,
he did. But he ended up playing a couple games for Cleveland down the road.
He did.
But it was never the same for him.
I don't even think he's what's he, like 30 now? I don't even think he's that old still.
How many games do you think he played for Cleveland?
Oh man, I don't know. Did he play a full season with them?
No, I don't think so.
I don't either, but I feel like
24 games and then 2 games for Indiana.
I don't remember that.
So before the season he came to the Sixers, he averaged 19 and 12 for the Lakers in 35 minutes per game. And then that was it. He went to Cleveland and he averaged 8 and 5 in 20 minutes. He played 26 games after he got traded to the Sixers. That was the end of his career. Huge disappointment. Again, but I could argue that, again, we argued the process was a disappointment, but the Andrew Bynum trade is what started the process. After he failed out.
And again, that's all got to be in the movie.
Yeah.
That's the opening scene of the movie, is getting Bynum and seeing and then seeing that weird half fro or whatever he used to wear, and just being like, you guys had this guy as a potential cornerstone for your organization, like, really? Yeah. And if you remember back in that time, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was noted that Kobe had openly challenged Bynum when he was still there with the Lakers, challenging his heart, challenging his conditioning, challenging all that stuff. And it brought the best out of Bynum.
I think he always had character issues. Remember the one playoff when he drilled JJ Barea when he was coming down the lane when they were about to get eliminated? Yeah. But
my point is like, Kobe saw it. And right. Kobe is the ultimate, I mean, that was the ultimate dog as far as in a positive, like the guy that's going to rip your heart out on a court. And he called you out in a minute if he thought you were soft or mentally soft or physically soft or whatever the case may be. I think Chris Mim had a beef with him before because he did it to him. But he really he never shown to be wrong with any of those guys that he called out. And he called him out, got the most out of him. When he left, we got nothing out of him. He was 100% right about that dude.
And you could argue, I mean, again, the argument to be made to counter that was that Bynum was a kid. I mean, the Sixers traded for him. He was 25 years old still.
Yeah, he was out of high school when he came to the league.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. I was joking. I know he's older than 30, but I feel like he's still like old enough to be able to still play in the NBA because of how young he was at that time.
Yeah.
But God knows what he's doing or what he looks like now. And Jesus, I can't even, who knows?
But let me go to my next one.
Yeah.
This one's probably the most disappointing game in our tenure. And I know you're going to think I'm going to say the Kawhi shot. I'm not going to say the Kawhi shot because that was more heartbreaking than disappointing. It was a great game.
Yeah.
The 2002 NFC Championship.
on my list.
The last game at the Vet, it was a lock that the Eagles were winning that game against Tampa Bay. We had all the stats that Tampa Bay had never won a game under 35 degrees.
It was
gonna
40.
be cold.
Yeah.
It was the last game in the history of Veterans Stadium. The Eagles had gone to the NFC Championship the year before, had the experience. Brian Mitchell runs the opening kickoff back to the Buccaneers 30-yard line. And if it wasn't the first play, it was the second play. Deuce Staley bust a run for a touchdown to open the game. We were up 7-0 within the first minute. It was a lock. And then it was all downhill from there. Capped off with Rondé Barber and the pick six, which basically just the entire stadium, you could have heard a pin drop.
Whole city.
I have 3 different NFC championships on my list, but I think of the 3, and maybe we could debate which one was the most disappointing. I think it has to be that one.
I actually had the 03 Eagles more so because of how they won out. They won out like even more suckers than the 02. I mean, 02 was heartbreaking because of what it meant for the Vet and everything like that. But 03, they played a Carolina team with Jake Delhomme, who I believe at the time was their backup quarterback that became their starter, similar to how like Brock Purdy was this year.
I don't think that's the case, but keep going.
I thought he wasn't he? I thought he wasn't there. Was it? He wasn't. I don't think he was their guy the whole year that year.
That was what, 03?
03.
So you got to look. No, he was. He started 17 games in 03. It was his first year there.
That's what it was then. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it was his first year there. They were 10-5.
And couldn't get a touchdown, couldn't get anything going. McNabb gets hurt. And I just remember the guy leaving the stadium on the TV. They did it to us again. The third straight year, I believe, at that point in time, where we got to the championship game and couldn't get over the hump.
Yep.
And so for me, that was even worse.
I think you can debate the two.
Sure.
I thought about which one was the Carolina loss was worse in regards to they probably should have won the game, but the Buccaneers one just hurt more. Because again, you had, I don't know, it was the second year in a row, and you kind of were like, oh man, maybe these guys just don't have it in them. But you didn't think that going into the Tampa Bay game. They weren't coming into the Vet and winning.
Carolina was an okay team that year. They weren't a great team. Like, that was a team that we were definitely supposed to beat up in that game. And a lot of people, myself included, thought that was the year we were going to get over the hump. This team's not even that good. We can definitely get to Delhomme. And it just didn't work out. And we only held them to 14 points. Like, we could have won the game, but our offense was non-existent. They completely shut the Eagles down.
Ricky Manning Jr.
Yeah, I was going to say Manning Jr. Absolutely.
Who came in? Was it Detmer?
Or Feely maybe?
No, I don't think it was Feely. It doesn't feel
well,
like
no. Did McNabb come? I'm trying to remember if
McNabb got hurt.
Right, I remember that. But did he play through that injury? Or did he come out in that?
No,
game?
he came out for a little while. I think he came back.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I remember him finished the game.
I guess technically that's the 2004 NFC Championship based on the.
It was the 03 season and the 04. Yeah, it was in the new year. But that game did spawn the future, which was getting TO, because our offense was so bad in that championship game that they made that big splash. And that actually is a perfect segue into my next.
Just for the record, before we go into it was Coy Detmer who came in.
It was Coy Detmer. Yeah, Coy Detmer couldn't play. The thing I remember most about Coy Detmer was the San Francisco game when he beat him up and then broke his arm.
Yeah.
And also when he was well known for going to Walmart before the season started and buying like 2 outfits and a toothbrush, like he was on the street, because he didn't want to be broke again, and he wanted to protect all the couple bucks that he was making in the NFL, which in hindsight might have been the right move for him to do.
No doubt.
But yeah, getting TO and just not having that play out the way. I mean, we as an adult, I always think about this and I say, yeah, the Eagles should have renegotiated and paid TO his money. But when I was a kid at that time, being what were we, 15, 20 years old, almost 20 years old at that time, I was very much, well, you got to, follow your contract, you sign the contract, and but that's not how the NFL works. we know as well as anybody, the NFL is a league that is very cutthroat, and the ownership will have no hesitancy to get rid of you, whether it's a surprise to you or not, if they think that's the right move. And so if you underperform a contract, and the players have no hesitancy to fight for a renegotiated deal if they outperform their contract. That's just the belly of the belly of the beast in the NFL, and the nature of the beast, I should say. And that was no different. And we just didn't give that. I mean, that guy played with a broken ankle in the Super Bowl and performed. He had over 100 yards. He balled out in that Super Bowl. He deserved the money. And I still believe if we had gave him that money, we would have at least won one Super Bowl with him and McNabb.
Very possible. I mean, T.O. was a monster, and obviously that era was so exciting to watch when those two were on the field together because they were so good. But you end up you win no playoff games with T.O. on your team. And it's funny you say that, and we don't love to plug other podcasts, but I was on Instagram today and they had a clip of Jason Kelsey's podcast and he had Howie Roseman on. And this clip literally came up this morning and he's telling a story about after that season when T.O. got suspended.
Right.
And I guess Howie had probably been new in the organization. I don't think he was at the position where he's at now for sure.
Right.
And he said the entire season was, if you thought it was a mess watching it from the outside, he was like, it was 10 times worse from the inside in regards to everything that was going on in that situation. And he says, Andy Reid at the end of the season goes, I know we like to get stuff together. He's like, it's been a long season. Why doesn't everybody just take 2 weeks off and then we'll reconvene? We're not in the playoffs. We have a little bit of extra time on our schedule. So Howie goes, yeah, I'm gonna go to Miami and just take some time off, go to the sun. So he goes, I get on this plane to go to Miami. I'm sitting in first class and the plane's not taking off. And the lady comes out and says, we're just waiting for one more passenger to come on board. And he's like, and it's the seat in front of me. He goes, and wouldn't you know it, T.O. walks onto the plane and sits down in front of me. And he said he was getting off the plane and he said something to T.O. and T.O. just went, fuck you. So things
yeah,
were
man,
good
sucks, dude. Like,
at that point in time.
and that was a team too. Like the Super Bowl year, that was their first year together, and they made magic. Imagine if they had true long-term chemistry, what that duo would have done to the NFL.
And McNabb's not completely. McNabb was, in retrospect, McNabb was a very sensitive person.
Oh, no doubt.
To be in the limelight himself, so he had some blame in that as well.
A lot of blame, actually. I think. I mean, he was one of the people who, like, T.O.'s making him more money, and for him to not want to have him on board because he wanted the limelight and T.O. was taking the limelight. I understand why T.O. has a beef with McNabb. But at the same time, like, that was 20 years ago, and they're still bickering like it was yesterday. Like, it's hilarious. It's hilarious, but also sad at the same time.
Yeah.
Because they both know the fact of the matter is they were the key to each other winning rings, and they're the reason why they didn't win rings.
Right.
And it's a sad tale. But that's what it is. I mean, those guys could have been Moss and Brady. I really believe that, if they had stayed together.
Yeah, so T.O. had great years afterwards, even with Dallas and mostly with Dallas. I think he moved on with Cincinnati and Buffalo at the end of his career.
And even that second year with the Eagles, until they shut him down, he was performing. I mean, I think that Denver game was that.
He had that long touchdown to wide receiver screen.
I believe he stiff armed. The thing was Champ Bailey.
I think you're right.
And just ran down it was a joke.
Yeah.
Monster
to the catch.
Yeah. So he was, I mean, in his prime, there was nobody better. He was amazing. And it just sucks that it played out the way it did. But
let's move on to the next one. The 2011 Philadelphia Phillies.
Oh, that's a top. That's one of the top ones for me too.
So I had both the 10 and 11 one, but the 11 season was worse when I looked it up. Best record in baseball both years. In 2011, we had 102 wins. Roy Halladay, Cliff Lee, Roy Oswalt, Cole Hamels, Ryan Howard, Chase Utley, Jimmy Rollins, the whole shebang. And they just go out with a whimper in the first round against the St. Louis Cardinals. The bats go completely dead. They get shut out 1-0 at home in Game 5 by Chris Carpenter. Ryan Howard tears his Achilles, and the era of prime Phillies baseball from 2007 to 2011 as the perennial best team in baseball in that stretch of time is dead, and it's over with. And such a sad, sad way for it to end.
And we felt that at the time too. It wasn't a lot of people saying, well, next year we still got this guy, that guy. Like it was a weird, ominous feeling that we had as a fan base for that team, mainly because of what happened to Howard. I mean, that was such a Shakespearean ending to the whole thing where like this guy, the quote unquote big piece, sits there and just shatters. And that's the last we see of the playoffs for what, 12 years.
Dude, from that period of time, let's say the second half of the season from 2007, when they started to get hot to chase down the Mets, through 2011, the entire season, every night was must-see baseball.
Mm-hmm.
It was so entertaining to watch. They were so good. It was just an amazing period of time, and you just need to appreciate it when it happens. And it's just, every good era comes to an end, and that was the end for that. And that it was heartbreaking the way it ended.
Yeah. And I mean, all those guys, I was thinking about it this morning, actually, when I was thinking about these disappointments, which was a great thing to be thinking about in the middle of the morning, right? But on a Monday. But we only like the four aces, right? We only had all four of them that one year also, wasn't it?
1.5 years, because they picked up Lee in the offs no, I'm lying. Yeah, I think you're right.
I think we traded Lee after that year.
No, they traded Lee before they got Halladay.
Right.
And then they re-signed him in the offseason.
Right.
So it was when they won the World Series in 2009, it was just Hamels.
Well, they won in 2008. You mean when they?
Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
2009 was Lee and Hamels. That was when they traded for Lee the first time.
Right.
Then they got rid of Lee after that season, and they brought in Halladay. So it was Halladay and Hamels.
Right.
And then that trade deadline, they traded for Oswald. This is 2010. That's when they lose to the Giants.
Right.
So then they had the three of them, and then that offseason, the following, they signed Lee. So you're right. It was just 2011 when they had all four. Although, what in 2012, maybe Oswalt was gone. I don't know what happened.
I don't remember Oswalt being there in 2012. I feel like Oswalt literally fell off the map.
Let's look up Roy Oswalt.
I also remember in 2009 when we got Lee the first time. I believe the first game was against the Giants, and I believe he was dominant on the mound, and I think he get the only RBI in the game too.
Yeah, he was a beast. I think he hit a double off the wall.
I think it was 1-0 that game, and he got the RBI. I forget, but in his prime though with us, he was awesome.
So how about this? So in 2012, Roy Oswalt was gone. So he was here for half of 10 and half of 11. He made 13 starts for us in 2010 after we acquired him. What do you think?
He wasn't that great.
What do you think his ERA was in those 13 starts?
I'm gonna say like a 4.
1.74.
In how many starts?
In 13 starts.
No.
I'm telling you, 7.
I remember there were some games where we were like, yo, what is he like? What's his deal? Like he wasn't that great.
In the year after, he was a 3.69.
That's what I'm thinking of then.
Yeah.
Oh, you're saying in 10, you're saying.
In 10 when they acquired him.
I'm sorry. Right. No, 10 he was good. No, 11.
I didn't remember him being that
very
good.
mediocre. Yeah.
I'm trying to see what he did in the postseason. Postseason pitching in 10. Looks like he had 2 starts in 10. One was bad and one was good. Interesting.
But that team, I mean, those guys, you have to come out with at least one ring with those 4 dudes. Like that's like, how does that happen?
I don't know.
Like, it's
crazy.
It's so that's the definition of disappointing, honestly. I'm gonna go take it old school on you though. I'm gonna say the 03 Phillies. Do you remember the 03 Phillies season?
Is that when Jeff Conine killed? That was last year at the vet, right?
Yeah. So that offseason they had gotten Tomey.
Right.
They got David Bell. They were 85 and 69 at one point in the middle towards the end part of September, in a great position to win the wild card spot, and they lost 7 of their last 8 games. They lost the series to the Reds at home, and then they got swept at Florida, and then lost the series back here to the Braves.
Florida won the World Series that year.
Right. And so that was a really disappointing. Now, again, closing the vet down in that kind of fashion sucked. But, Tommy had a monster year that year. And everything was kind of coming up like this might be it. Finally getting over that 10-year hump at the time. And they just ran into a wall at the end of the year. That was a BOA team.
Yeah. So what was so frustrating for me personally is, so that was the year, obviously we graduate high school in 2003. And then I go to Pitt for the fall. And that September, when all that's happening, again, this is 2003, you can't stream the games. So I'm like watching these games on ESPN Gamecast, and they're just losing and losing and losing. And they actually, I don't know if you have the schedule up in front of you.
Yeah.
So they went to Pittsburgh probably in September. They played there because I went to a game.
They did. They lost 2 or 3.
And Nick Punto gets picked off second base in the 9th inning on a snap throw from the catcher. Just a complete debacle. I think it was it a weekend series? You don't have the calendar?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I think it was a Saturday night, and we went to the game at PNC Park, and Nick Punto gets.
It makes sense though, because that second game there was 33,000 people, and Pittsburgh don't draw like that, so it was probably a weekend series because people probably came up from Philly.
What was the score? Does it have the scores? 5-4?
5-3.
5-3. Okay, that was probably.
Memory is crazy in this pod.
Yeah.
8-4. They lost the first game, lost 5-3 the second game, won 10-7 the third game. Can you tell me who lost the games in the 2 losses? What pitchers for the Phillies?
Were they starters or relievers?
Starters. Well, I think one was starting, but he did kind of go back and forth between long relief and starting. So
you're gonna give me Amari Telemaco?
That Amari Telemaco.
I don't need to give you the second one, dude. That's
a big get, huh?
Padilla?
Not Padilla.
Wolf?
No.
Who?
That'd be that Kevin Millwood.
That was my next guess, actually.
Funny though, Wolf actually won the third game, but Mike Williams got to save his 28th of the season at the time. But yeah, they just ran into a wall that year, and that was a nice little fun squad. I think if I remember correctly, Brett Myers and Jimmy were coming up at that time.
Yeah,
we thought they would be the next guys up and the future, so to speak. And they were, but they weren't ready at that point in time. But they were definitely the guys that were going to be developing into what they were by the 07 and 08. A quick note about that team too. The vet was popping, bro. They had 58,000 at a game, 58,303, 57,883. Like, I mean, we were ready.
Yeah, that was, dude, $5 general admission, upper deck.
That was the year the Miguel Cabrera game.
Yeah, I mean that was early. I called that. We talked about that. I called that team.
About all that stuff because we weren't supposed to be doing certain things.
So let's just we've dived into a couple a little deeper than I would have liked. Let's rattle off some, and we'll just quickly comment on them before we shut down. You had the 03. I'll go next. I have a group of players here. Anybody they tried to bring in to be Allen Iverson's sidekick after the 01 finals.
Yep, I got that.
Dude, so I have a list of Big Dog Robinson, Matt Harpring, Chris Webber, Keith Van Horn, Derek Coleman. They always tried to find this fit next to Iverson to be a secondary scorer, and the model to have it be successful was 4 defensive players and let Iverson cook, and it just never.
You almost had a verbatim from what I had.
Okay,
that was exactly one of the ones that I had. I also had, remember when Chris Ford, by the way, I forget what year that was, when he tried to have Iverson off the bench. The late Chris Ford, rest in peace. I think he passed last year or the year before. But yeah, that was comical.
Yeah.
But other notables I had, well, did you have any other ones you wanted to bring up before? You want to go off in a row?
Let's just go back and forth, but let's just move them quickly.
The 2011 Eagles, Dream Team.
Yeah.
I say that sarcastically, but that's what they wanted to be called. And then they were 4-8 at one point, and they finished 8-8. But you know what's funny is I looked at their roster and the way the schedule played out for them that year. So they were 4-8. They won the last 4 games pretty convincingly. If they had like 4 more games, they might have won out again. Like they might have hit their streak or their peak way too late. But either way, that was just like they put a target on their back. And the fan base, you know, we all thought that was going to be an all-star team and all-star finish, and it was not. It was just very disappointing, very lackluster. So that was one of the squads that I had for the Eagles. Actually, the only other Eagles team that I had on my list besides the one we already talked about.
All right. Well, I have 4 more Eagles things on here, so I'll write off my Eagles ones for you. I have a couple of just individuals. Nandi Asamoah, huge disappointment. Chip Kelly.
You know what? Honestly, I just forgot that they even happened. Not forgot, but I try to like push them out of my memory for like, you know, I don't want to think about it, so I didn't put them on here.
But the first game with Chip was electric.
Oh, it was
Electric. When he was running that offense, and dude, the NFL figured that thing out in like
so fast.
10
as
games.
Fast as we ran out on the field without huddles, they figured out how to stop it.
And obviously, I don't know how you don't have on your list Carson Wentz.
Again, try to figure out the draft. Yeah, that's a good one though. I didn't focus a lot on individuals as much, but that's a great one. You also could, the one thing I do have on here aside from the team element, the failure to bring Dawkins back at the end of the career.
Yeah.
And have him walk to Denver. I mean, he still lives in Denver. Like that should have never happened.
I have one more. Well, I have 2 more Eagles ones actually. So let me just the one 2009 NFC Championship we didn't mention, that kind of came out of the blue. So I don't know how
Cardinals won.
Yeah, when were down 19, they came back, take the lead. Again, of all the losses, probably the least disappointing, but still on there. But even more so, the Alshon Jeffrey drop
in New Orleans. Yeah,
you can feel the Nicky Foles magic maybe coming around.
Yeah,
it hurt.
I would say it hurt. I don't know if it's disappointing. I think it was just one of those like, oh, we almost had it, but I don't think it was disappointing. Where like you saw like, it's like the Kawhi shot. It was just it just happened. It was heartbreaking, and that it was in that moment. I don't know if it was a disappointment overall.
That's fair.
But
that's a very good comparison to the Kawhi shot, where it just because it kind of came out of nowhere that season, so it's hard to be disappointed. I'm with you. That's a good call.
Yeah. And the other thing, the last one I had was the 2001-2002 Sixers.
Yeah.
Coming off the finals appearance. That summer, it was the Sixers city.
Yep.
We still were like, Iverson's the man. We're going to win a ring with this guy. Let's just get him the right team. Get him some help, like we just said about, you know, in hindsight, the Sixers failed miserably in that time period to get him appropriate, you know, second fiddle or second star to play alongside him. But that team was 43-39, and they finished 4th in the division. I believe in the conference. I want to say too. Yeah, they also that was back when the first round was best of 5.
Right.
And they lost in 5 to Boston that year.
Paul Pierce.
Yeah, that was in Boston. And just a disappointing I mean, like I said, we thought we were going to be there, right there for years to come, and it just never panned out. And the 01-02 season started it, and then we had other years where like we had scattered in there. A couple of years we didn't make the playoffs at all. Some years we made it, but we ran into like Detroit or you know, another hot team at the time. Just couldn't get our legs under us. And before we know it, Iverson's one of the best players of all time, but has nothing to show for it and is out of town.
Yep. Couldn't agree more.
So that 01-02 team was definitely a disappointment. In fact, their expected win-loss, I'm looking at the Basketball Reference page, their expected win-loss that year was supposed to be 46-36, so they didn't even meet that. And they had won 56 the year before. So they were expected to come back down to earth some, but they came back down to earth and then went a little bit lower than that.
Yeah, I mean, the 01 run was so magical. It just seemed like they were just out of gas after that. I have 1, 2, 2.5 more on my list. And you said you're done?
Yeah.
All right.
So just riff off what you got.
Bigger disappointment. Elton Brand max contract player or Elton Brand general manager?
You got to say the max player.
General manager was pretty bad too, man.
Well, hey, he's still the general manager.
Yeah,
And
technically by title.
right. So
But yeah,
who's a more phantom general manager, Sam Fold or Elton Brand?
dude, both of them are big. It's got to be Elton, but like,
Dude, I didn't
it's
even know
close.
Sam Fold was the GM of the Phillies.
I forgot that too.
Yeah, because everybody always talks about Dombrowski.
I forgot that too. So I have two players left on my list. One I'm going to save for the end because I don't know. I don't think it's a disappointment, but I want to get your take on it. But definitely a disappointment. Dominic Brown,
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
untouchable.
I thought he was gonna be the next Griffey.
Remember, he had that 1 month of May where he went off.
He went to the All-Star game because of that month.
I know he hit like 14 homers in May. I think it was 2013.
Dude, he can still go right now and put that on his resume and be a hitting instructor somewhere. I think he's in the Phillies organization still. I think he's not playing, but I'm saying like I think he's a scout or something.
No, he applied at Shipley to be a coach there, and then it didn't end up working out. He went somewhere else.
Yeah, I saw something with him not that long ago where he was doing something with baseball. I'm trying to look it up.
I think he's doing like camps or something. I'm just gonna see if I can find it real quick.
Yeah, me too.
No, I don't see anything. All right, let me ask you the last one. And this one's gonna be a little controversial, and I don't know if we're experts enough to talk about it. All in all, compared to expectations, was Eric Lindros's career a disappointment in Philadelphia?
No.
He was supposed to be the best player. It was just short-lived because he got beat up.
No, I don't agree with that at all. I think he was a great player here.
He was great.
I think that he didn't get over the hump
in the league when they traded him. Huh?
The end of his career here, he got knocked around because of the concussions. Kasperitis, Scott Stevens, a couple guys. But no, that guy was the face of the league for a minute.
Okay, that's fair. And he won an MVP. I don't think he was disappointing. But I think when they traded for him and they traded a lot for him, they were thinking multiple Stanley Cups and they didn't get any.
No, yeah, 100%. And the Legion of Doom, which we talked about last week with LeClaire and Renberg, that was, I mean, they were dominant for a long time at that. Well, not a long time, but for a good handful of years there in the 90s. And they just, that 97 year, they got to the cup and got swept out the gym or the rink or whatever you want to call it, the barn that they say. But yeah, they just, I don't know. They just
he doesn't belong in this conversation, but I wanted to put some hockey. I wanted to put some hockey out there for him.
No, I if anybody, I could maybe and a current Flyer fan could probably debate it, but I would say James Van Riemsdyk would be somebody that you could talk about as far as disappointing. Every time that guy leaves, he balled at, or whatever you want to call it in hockey, the equivalent of balling out. But when he came back, he forgot to play again.
Yeah, I don't know enough about hockey to speak to JVR.
Yeah, so to me, he's disappointing. But yeah, Lindros definitely he should not be. I don't think that's fair to put him in that discussion.
You're right. You're right. So listen, we got all of this out of our systems. I want to take a more positive approach next week. Let's refresh. Hopefully the Phillies will have won a game by that point in time. And we're going to definitely talk Sixers basketball next week, playoff preview for the Nets series. So we're going to try and make it a little more positive and fun, but sometimes it's good to get some of the negative energy out of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, get it out, especially for the playoffs. Get it out.
Absolutely. Unless you have something else, were you good to wrap it up?
Yeah, I'm good to wrap it. I'm just looking at Dominic Brown's stats, and I'm just amazed that this guy didn't become anything, and he just fell off the map. But he was one time quoted as being the total package. That was his nickname.
Dude, he was untouchable. You couldn't trade him.
Remember that? He was one of those, the Kyle Drabeck and all those other untouchable guys that we used to have back then.
Michael Taylor.
Yeah, they didn't do anything.
Yeah. UConn up 12 to start the second half. I wonder where Al's going to take us to dinner next week. Or
I don't know. I'm hoping for maybe Firebird or somewhere expensive. They were severely underseeded. They're blowing teams out.
Yeah, when Dan Hurley has that quote that they keep showing in January when they lost like 4 out of 6, and he goes, "I hope you get us now because it's not going to be for much longer."
Yeah, and he was 100% right because they're beating dudes up.
Dude, again, I don't want to drag this on too long. This will be 5 national championships for them in like the last 25 years.
No, it's a great program.
Probably the best, the most national championships in the last handful of years.
Yep,
So,
absolutely.
good for them. I'm assuming they hold on, and good for Al. Congrats to him on winning his bracket. We'll be right back. We'll be back next week, and let's drop that beat.